This is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
Got Celtics in 4? Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
Let's go. What do you think for tonight?
You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about the
Let's go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not. No,
recently he's putting up games like
above our head for the players.
literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think right now
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do.
And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to Celtics Talk Weekly Postgame Live. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo. Alongside of me tonight, Franco, Griffin, and Randy. Above me, and Franco just breaking out the shades along with everybody else here. Franco, let's demonstrate those shades real quick right off the bat here. Yep, the detachable, the 2003 Spy Kids shades on Franco. Randy, technically the originator of these, but it's because the Boston Celtics, they're streaking once again. Boston Celtics, they win tonight's contest over the Utah Jazz, 114-108. The Boston Celtics now improving on their homestand on the Garden floor. The Boston Celtics really running away with this one at a certain point in time, only for the Jazz to come back. It's been a recent theme with the Celtics team as of late, but as you guys all know, the drill here. Initial thoughts. We'll start with you here on the bottom, Franco.
We started off, the Utah Jazz were able to maintain a controlled game throughout the first half. We saw them able to compete with the Boston Celtics through the first half, be able to maintain a solid lead, and the Celtics were able to exploit that during the third quarter. We thought the Celtics were going to be able to run away, maintain that, but the Utah Jazz were able to get on a 38 to 14 point run within the fourth quarter, making it a tied game at one point. And the Celtics were able to come together during the timeout and really be able to finish out strong. You need those types of possessions from your star players when it comes down to the games that don't matter or are just regular season games. This would have been a throwaway game, but the Celtics were able to throw it together within those final 5 minutes, showing that why they are the top contending team against the Utah Jazz, who were really striving to get a win tonight over Boston. They put together a great fourth quarter run, and we were able to see some great contributions from the Celtics bench, and that's something we need to become acclimated with the Boston Celtics for the second half of this regular season, is seeing games out of Peyton Pritchard last game and Sam Hauser this game, being able to light up the scoreboard, be able to take advantage of their opportunities, because there's not many times during the season excuse me, that you'll see Sam Hauser have the opportunity to shoot 19 3-pointers in one game. But tonight you had a few players out, and you want to keep your players rested, especially coming up for the next stretch ahead. And after a couple of difficult games before this, with some banged up injuries, good to see Drew Holiday out there contributing. Same with Derek White throughout the first half. And it's a game that was a scrappy win. It could have been much more maintained if they were able to stick with the rotation players. I think during the third and fourth quarter. We need to see those guys be able to conserve a lead more than try to extend it. And furthermore, just being able to have that effort on the defensive end to stop the momentum that the Jazz created in the third quarter.
I just want to say tonight, it felt kind of like a practice. Randy was saying it pregame before this. I won't take your take, but it felt like a slow game. I feel like the Boston Celtics tonight, they were kind of giving it half effort because can we be honest? Like, can you realistically give it half effort against the Utah Jazz? Yes, you can, but it almost came to bite you at the end. But my takeaways from this is we've been talking a lot about Sam Hauser potentially getting his role switched out. And we talked a lot about Sam Hauser, but tonight he was a big key part of this win. And it shows you he could still shoot that three ball. And I think ultimately what it came down to for the Boston Celtics tonight is how much I miss Drew Holiday, first of all. But other than that, for the Boston Celtics tonight, it was just showing that they could still play around with some teams and still get the dub. And I wanted to say, too, it's with these lower teams, they have nothing to lose. So they're going to come out against the Boston Celtics. I think at the same time, you kind of think, all right, they're going to tank for a higher draft pick. But you have to think, when you're playing the Boston Celtics, we're the defending champs. And teams are going to come out regardless on draft picks and stuff. Maybe towards the more end of the season, it will be different. But they're going to come out and they're going to give it all they have. So I think ultimately at the end, it got a little shaky, but for Drew Holiday to get that put away steal and for the Boston Celtics to ultimately come around with that dub, I was happy about it. Definitely some things where I would critique because I didn't like a lot how they were playing sluggish a lot of the game. But like I said, again, do you really have to against the Utah Jazz? Not necessarily. And that's why you saw players like Sam Hauser step up tonight and have 33 points.
Yeah. Guys, I think I'm delusional because I'm pissed off right now. For real. Like, I'm pissed. Like, if it wasn't for our veteran leadership, we would have sank. We would have sank 100%. Right? Sam Hauser, we can't expect him dropping 33 tonight. I mean, and now I'm gonna say it right now. Sam Hauser is a veteran to me. He's a veteran, right? He's been on the team several years now. I'd consider him a vet in this league. And if it wasn't for our veteran leadership tonight, our ship would have 100% sank. It was Sam Hauser. It was that big dunk by Jaylen Brown down the stretch, and it was that three late in the game by Drew Holiday. That was the reason we won. And if maybe someone can explain to me other reasons we won, but to me, down the stretch, it was just strictly veteran leadership and executing. That was all it was. Our interior defense tonight was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. And this was a game. I was talking to my dad about it. I was saying, this is a game. There's no Lauri Markkanen. There's no Jordan Clarkson. There's no Keontae George. There's no reason the Celtics shouldn't go out and just blow this team off the court, win by 20. And you know, there's an argument to be made that, oh, you don't face these guys on an everyday in an everyday NBA game, so you can't prepare for them. I'm sorry. Half those guys on the Jazz were G Leaguers. I don't care if you can't prepare for them. They're not NBA level, or maybe they are, but they're not Celtics level. So there was really no excuse for what happened tonight. Our interior, our paint defense actually specifically was abysmal. I was actually in the first half, I was just some notes that I took today. I actually wrote, oh, the Jazz have no perimeter shooters, no one who can shoot threes, right? They were, I don't know, I think they had 2 threes in the first half or something like that. And I just put in my notes, oh, if the Jazz they have these open looks. Scal even pointed it out. They have these open looks. They couldn't knock down anything. They were wide open. And I was like, oh, we're up, 4 at halftime? I mean, great, we're winning, but we should start pulling away, which we did. And then come the fourth quarter, it was a completely different team. And I say this all the time on the show. For the Celtics, it's like when it's going good, it's going really good. But when it's going bad, it's going really bad. And what I mean by that tonight is in that fourth quarter, the Jazz were hitting shots and the Celtics were missing wide open shots. And I know we like to say, oh, they're jacking them up there, but these weren't jacks. These were wide open shots that, just like I talked about earlier, when it's going bad, it's going bad. They're missing these wide open shots, and the Jazz are hitting these contested threes. And like I said, it's just, I think it's all just really momentum. But I mean, I'm glad we pulled away this win, but I'm pissed off. This was not an ideal game for me tonight.
I'm really thinking tonight's game, it represents a game on the schedule where the Celtics just want to escape. They
Yeah,
really
trap
just
game.
want to
It was a
escape
trap game.
with a win, because
Yeah.
really
Right.
looking at the schedule and looking at where the Celtics have been recently, they've had 3 tough opponents on their home schedule. They had Denver, Cleveland over the weekend, last weekend, and then this weekend, the Los Angeles Lakers, and of course the Oklahoma City Thunder are on the horizon. In between those teams, it's been the Blazers, the Sixers. This is one of those games, the Utah Jazz. And in all of those games, the Boston Celtics have rested a significant amount of their rotation players, their playoff rotation players, that is. And that could be as simple as 3 guys, could be 4 guys, but they've done it here in these little stretches in between the margins of these really nothing games. The Celtics want to win these games, but when they're in these games, the Boston Celtics, they only need to dominate for small portions of the game. Otherwise, the Boston Celtics, from my perspective here, it could have been a closer game, certainly at the end, or it could have been a game where the Utah Jazz win, but really the Celtics, they dominated that third quarter. And this was one of those games where the Celtics essentially just needed to dominate a portion of the game, and that's how they were going to escape, because no Jason Tatum tonight, no Kristaps Porzingis, no Al Horford, 3 significant rotation players for the Boston Celtics, and no Porzingis and no Horford. That kind of answers some of the
Yeah.
questions in regard to the interior tonight. Really looking at who was out on the floor, and the Celtics, their second tier big man rotation. Yes, they're fine. Cornette and Queta specifically, those are fine big men, but they're fine big men in terms of their actual role on the team, of what the minutes, where they actually get minutes within the rotation. Tonight, when they're asked to step up into a
30.
much bigger role, that's when they falter for a long sample size or a long period of time. But I thought tonight's game for the Celtics was just one of those games where they had to escape. They had to go out there and they had to escape with a win. And thankfully, Sam Hauser actually stepped up in this game, scored 33 points. We'll get to him in a little bit, but he was certainly the highlight player of the night. Jaylen Brown had a solid game. Derek White was fine for portions of this game. Peyton Pritchard came out hot. But the Celtics team overall in this particular game, I really didn't expect a gung-ho type of performance out of the Boston Celtics where they come out and just obliterate the Jazz. But I would have thought that maybe the margin is much bigger here at the end. But to me, I thought this was going to be a game where the Jazz play tough, they play hard, they play the Celtics physically, and the Celtics at times struggle within those physical moments. And I wouldn't have said it was going to be a 6-point victory at the end. I would have definitely been a 10 member of the thinking it's a 10 plus point margin at the end club. But I'm still satisfied with this Celtics win for the simple fact of they needed to grab this win with the least amount of effort possible. And I thought they did that for who really played in this game, whose roles really said what within this game. Sam Hauser of course, took over the bulk of the scoring. But overall, I thought the Celtics, they did what they needed to do tonight. They rested a couple of key players. Now, one key player we'll actually get to later on in the show in terms of what he released on Twitter later on tonight. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. But I'm not pissed off like you, Randy, right now. I'm not pissed off that the Celtics won this game. That's what I'm confused about. Is how are you pissed off after a Celtics win? I mean,
Why am I
obviously,
pissed? Well,
obviously
because
they didn't play up
when-
to their standards, but
Well,
they did
I'm
everything they
pissed.
needed to
I'm
do
pissed
tonight.
because because I saw some of the things that I saw when we were playing 500 basketball tonight. That's why I'm pissed off, right? I mean, I'm not pissed that we win. I'm actually happy. I'm happy that we won because it's one of those games. Yeah, you just survive. But moving forward, it is one of those things. It's like you look at why were we playing 500 basketball, and it's the same exact thing that we saw tonight for an entire quarter almost. And come playoffs, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we talk about the on-off switch, and it's like, I'm sorry, against the Jazz team, yeah, you can afford having an off switch and still win. Against the Cavaliers, if we did what we did in that third quarter, or in that fourth quarter, to a team like the Cavaliers, I'm sorry, that 20-point lead's turning into down by 10. It is.
Well,
Can I-
yeah, go ahead, Griffin.
So I kind of want to add on to that. I want to say this. I've been a fan this year where I've had those moments where I've been super pissed at the Celtics. It's because like I know they could get the win. Yeah, and I know they could get the win, and especially tonight against the Utah Jazz. You guys know the Boston Celtics are more than capable to go out and beat them by 30. 100%. You know that because we beat better teams by 30. The aggravating thing for me tonight was it's more so, why are you guys slacking off? Like, I get it. I understand it's a team where it's, like I said, it's kind of essentially a practice for you guys because, like, look at them. I mean, be honest. This was nowhere near the Celtics' best effort. Nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. So you got to think about that. If you gave them even most of your effort, it would have been a completely different game because of this. The Celtics.
I mean,
yeah. What were you saying, Randy?
No, I was just saying, to your point, it's like, it's not the fact that they had a bad quarter, that's fine. Stuff happens. But it's the fact that I just repeatedly, possession after possession after possession in that fourth quarter, continued to see lazy closeouts, walking back on defense, shot watching, ball watching when it comes off the. It was, like I said, we're not going to be perfect. We're not. But as a fan who can see our potential, and like I have said in the past, see our future dynasty in the making, these type of efforts piss me off. They really do.
Yeah, I agree with that because and this is the thing. When we slack off in the fourth quarter, look at how close this game was. And look how many times the Jazz were about to get the lead. Like,
and we faced the G League team tonight. We faced the G League team tonight. That's the sad part.
We did.
Well, that kind of gets me to the next point, and you guys are already kind of talking about it, but what does this homestand really say about the Boston Celtics right now? Because the first game of the homestand, it was the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Boston Celtics start the homestand flawlessly, 23-5, or no, 25-3 rather. It was 25-3, at a 22-point lead for the Boston Celtics to start the game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And as we know, the Cavaliers chipped away. It was eventually 10 at halftime. Celtics put 7 points back up on that lead in the third quarter. It was 17 in that third quarter against the Cavaliers. And then we all know it was chipped away again to the point in which the Cavaliers walked away with a win at the Garden. And then the next game, the Celtics come out, grab a 20-point lead against the Nuggets, and what's happening? That lead is chipped away into a single-digit lead eventually in the fourth quarter. You fast forward to the Lakers game, the next big game on the schedule. We had Portland and Philadelphia in between there as well, and it might have happened in those games, but I'm going to focus more on the bigger games here. The Lakers game, that game, the Celtics grab a 22-point lead in that one, and what happens? Eventually, the lead falls all the way back down to 4 in the fourth quarter, and then tonight, obviously the opponent isn't the same as, or isn't as of contending status as some of these other opponents the Celtics have faced this past week on the homestand, or anything like the Oklahoma City Thunder coming up on the homestand. But the Utah Jazz, we're seeing the same trend happen against the Jazz tonight, where the Boston Celtics, they go up by 22 tonight, and the lead is cut down to 0, and it's tied at a certain point in the fourth quarter. Luckily, the Celtics never gave up that lead, but the Boston Celtics eventually gave up the entire lead up until the point it was tied. I mean, from looking at the Celtics' recent trend in doing that, is that a potential concern for the Boston Celtics come playoff time? Because I kind of go back to our conversation of January. When do these when do these switches, right? When do they turn off? What date
I mean,
do you really turn them off? You don't really do that much. You
yeah, I
don't really
mean,
do that. You have to progressively do it. And the Celtics, they've been progressively allowing teams to come back.
well,
It,
it's like annoying, really. Sorry, Franco, I'll be quick. It's just like annoying as a fan. Like, did I have doubts that we were gonna win this game? A little, but like not really. Like when it was tied, I was like, okay, what differentiates this team from 2023, 2022, and teams that would blow and Celtics teams that would go up and then blow leads and lose games? What differentiates this team from that team? That's what I think really is the reason we win, is because we have those veteran leaders. And like I said, to me, Sam Hauser. I mean, that's it's just one of those things. Like, it's just very like annoying to see that you have a team with such good, like, so much potential. And I'm not saying we should be blowing teams out by 20 every night, and people blow leads, but it's the way you blow the lead. Like, if they're making step back threes in your face, contested, tip your cap. Joe Mazzulla would probably even say, "Good defense. What are you gonna do?" But it's when it's stuff like what happened tonight and against the Lakers and against the Cavs, that is the problem. That is where the problem is. It's when you're missing open shots. So I get it, right? You're gonna try and take your open shots, and I'm not saying they should pass those up. But I talk to my friends about this all the time. Like, when it's going bad like that, even if it's a good 3-pointer, like I repeatedly say, when it's going bad, it's going bad. They're missing wide open 3-pointers. And even when it's wide open, like, if you're losing and the momentum's not on you, drive the ball. I don't care if the three is wide open. When they're not making it, they are not making it regardless. You could have a guy 10 feet away from you. They're not going to hit it. They're just not. And I think, call me the coach at this point, but I think that's what they need to do, really. Like, when they start doing, going into that pattern where the momentum starts swinging towards the other team, like we've seen, instead of just even shooting these good shots that are threes, just drive the ball. I don't care. Just drive it. Like, get to the line, get to the free throw line, get a layup, you get something, get a good shot. Even if you miss at the rim, get a good shot, because lately those open 3-pointers, when we've been given momentum to them, they aren't falling. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's my take.
These rotations don't matter. It's a very experimental phase for the Celtics right now, and you are not going to see these types of rotations, these types of plays drawn up during playoffs. Even against these bigger named games, obviously Nuggets or the Lakers, it's still the regular season, and the Celtics are, their main win is when they walk away healthy from a game, especially moving forward and being able to give these repetitions to these bench players and rotational players who you're not going to see very much of or any of when it comes down to playoff time. I mean, you have Baylor Shireman getting 12 minutes.
I like
and
that. I like
and
that.
yeah, you need to get these guys these reps, and obviously these opportunities are huge for these guys to be able to gain that experience. But it's just, I don't see this as a very, like, anywhere where we were in January and December when we we invented a thing called the panic button, and that doesn't exist right now, and probably doesn't exist, and hopefully doesn't exist until playoff time, and that's just due to the anticipation. But this team is just experimenting. Sam Hauser played a much more versatile role than he would in any other game this season. He was also effective on the defensive end. He was getting a lot of matchups, and Jalen Brown was able to close out tonight's game along with Drew Holiday and Derek White. So I think this team showcased what they needed to, and being more optimistic and also looking at the fact that the Celtics have not been able to hold on to these leads. It's just, I feel like it's really, this team is putting together new rotations that we haven't seen before. Obviously, I want to start to see rotations where you have one of the starting five out there. Per se, let's say you have Drew Holiday out there with Derek White or not Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and a few other bench guys. I want to be able to see Drew Holiday be able to take advantage of those opportunities that he is out there with a bench rotation and is able to mend well with them. Because if the Joe Mazzulla gives them the call during playoffs and takes him off the bench, they need to be able to be compatible with this starting lineup and be able to maintain that next man up mentality.
Can I add on to that too?
Go ahead.
I wanted to say this to kind of build off of Randy's point. I think it's basically just building bad habits, and that's a thing that's going to kill you, because the Boston Celtics are more than comfortable with giving up a lead, and that's the thing that frustrates me. That's a bad habit that we don't want to see in playoffs, and that's the only thing that frustrated me with this game, is because if you allow yourself to do this against the weaker teams, then you've seen it. Like you guys have said, you've seen it against the bigger teams and they beat you. So you can't build bad habits like this. But I do want to say this too. With this game, at the end of the day, we did still win. A win is a win. How ugly or pretty it is, a win is a win. And I do like what you said, Franco. I love how they were giving Baylor Shireman and Torrey Craig some more minutes tonight. I thought we saw an excellent game from Baylor Shireman last game, and just to give him more minutes and kind of get him used to this, because come playoff time, he's going to play. I feel like he is. We've talked about Sam Hauser and how he's been struggling sometimes, but Baylor Shireman is a player that I could potentially see getting a little bit of time in playoffs. But I think ultimately it came down to the Boston Celtics still got it done. Was it pretty? No, but they still got it done. And the thing is that really hurts to say this, though, is it's the bad habits. You don't want to see that coming into playoffs. You don't, because blowing leads like this is not a fun thing to do. And I know as Celtics fans, we are sitting there at our screen, bashing our head against our table. I know I am, when I'm like, oh, well, we're
Here
up
we
20,
go.
but that's going to drop. Like against the Cavs game, I want to just say that too. I texted Kyle, right? And I said, he was all hyped up about the 20-point lead. And I'm like, we're going to blow it. It's just what the Celtics do. And it's the awful thing about it, but it's what they do. But ultimately, you got the win. That's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, and really mapping out what the Celtics do. The lead tracker does that well. I mean, look at this. This is exactly what we've seen out of the Boston Celtics as of late. And tonight, 24 was the biggest lead for the Boston Celtics. 14 lead changes also in this one. Really went back and forth at the beginning, but 24 points, the largest lead of the night for the Boston Celtics late in that third quarter. But then you see the game all the way, it takes all the way down until the Utah Jazz eventually tied the Boston Celtics late in the fourth. Eventually, the Celtics go on a little bit of a run to end the game to end up with a good quality home win. But we do see on this lead tracker the bad habits that are being mentioned here on Postgame of the Boston Celtics, because a lot of lead trackers as of late, if anybody follows the show, sees the lead tracker every show, this is what they've looked like. This is what they primarily looked like for the Boston Celtics. This actually doesn't look too much different from what we saw in the Lakers game. The only difference there was it was a lot closer of margins for the Celtics and the Lakers, along with the fact the Lakers actually did control a good portion of the start of that game. But otherwise, this looks fairly identical to the Lakers game on Saturday, yet the Celtics come in tonight and play the Utah Jazz. Of course, walk out with the victory, but that has been kind of the saying for the Celtics at certain points of the season is a win is a win. The Celtics haven't done things all that pretty all year long. Yet you look at their record and go, well, they're only 4 games behind where they were last year. And it's there's still, I would say, there's still a possibility, right? The Celtics match their record from last season, albeit they can only match their record from last season, and I highly doubt the Celtics are going undefeated the rest of the way, which means they're probably not going to match that same record from last season. So the Celtics, they're going to have a worse record than they had last year, but the record they end up with at the end of the season, it's still going to be a quality record. It's still going to be a record that's good enough for the number 2 seed. And we have seen moments out of this team this season where we look at them and go, they've flipped a switch. They flipped the switch, whether it's been this quarter, this game, this different stretch, depending on which time period we're really talking about. And the Boston Celtics have been that switch flipping team of the entire NBA. And really, there only been a couple of teams like this in NBA history, and they're usually those veteran led squads out there. But in terms of where the Celtics are at this point in the season, do you guys see them as a reliable switch flipping team right now, or is that switch flipping ability ultimately going to go by the wayside when it comes to a playoff series? Will these bad habits attack the Boston Celtics, or or has the recent run we've seen as of late, is that the true Boston Celtics that will come out in the NBA playoffs? We'll start with you, Franco.
I haven't had any reason to have any wavering confidence in this team's ability to put themselves together and come out to win a game that is a must win. And per se, obviously, we see in the Cleveland Cavaliers game is the prime example of the devil's advocate for this argument. But the Celtics didn't view that as a must win game. I, I feel like that was something that the Cleveland Cavaliers wanted more, and they made a big statement by being able to beat the Celtics, be able to clinch that number 1 seed in logistical standards. Obviously, the Celtics would be banking on a miracle to try to win that number 1 seed back from the Cavs at this point of the season. But now you're just seeing this team feel a lot more relaxed, and obviously with a challenging schedule ahead and a matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder, I feel like you're going to see a lot of the guys who are out tonight step in. Obviously, no word on how Kristaps is feeling. We'll be able to get into that deeper into the show, but that's going to be a game that these guys are going to really show up for. Jason Tatum will most likely be healthy, be able to contribute in that game, and just the Thunder being able to pull out that 25-point win against the Celtics, or that win against the Celtics a couple months back, really probably left a sour taste in this team's mouth. So I'm not too worried about that per se. And if it does happen in a playoff season or a playoff series, I don't think this team is going to be one to throw their hands up and cower if they go down hypothetically 0-2 in a series. I feel like they're going to be able to muster up the game plan and be able to have that game by game mentality to pull out this type of momentum. And I think it just needs to become more infectious throughout the rest of the roster, trying to get everyone acclimated. And it's just the dry spot of this season. So we've heard this team say on multiple occasions that they know when they need to bring it to one of these games and also play with the intensity. And they understand the fact that you are going to get the best out of all these lower echelon teams like the Utah Jazz, who put on a good performance during the fourth quarter, were able to light up the Celtics off some bit of momentum and made this a challenging game until the final 2 minutes, where it really mattered the most. You saw Jaylen Brown be able to make 2 clutch free throws. Then you see Drew Holiday be able to make a 3-point shot that during a playoff situation would be a very key shot in a game situation, and that's something that you need to be able to rely on Drew Holiday to do, and also being able to step up on the defensive end to close out this game was the biggest takeaway I had from this game altogether, just due to the significance of it. So that is a testament to why I believe this team doesn't have any problem turning on the switch.
Now, before you go, Griffin, real quick, I just want to say the Celtics. Now, does recent data suggest that you looking at the Celtics' ability to flip the switch, right? In January, when it was said to the fan base and everybody out there, flipping the switch was not something anybody got on board with from the standpoint the Celtics went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, winning and losing ball games. And from that standpoint, none of us were really convinced that the Celtics could ever flip that switch on because at that point in time they had not. Yet now the Boston Celtics, they're 16-4 in their last 20 games. And the recent data suggests they've flipped a switch or turned a corner in some sense within this season compared to January and December. But does that recent data suggest that their switch flipping ability actually holds some validity towards the playoffs, or will that ability and that habit ultimately bite the Celtics come playoff time? And you can take that one, Griffin.
So we talked about this a lot, kind of coasting and then getting ready before playoffs. Now, that's definitely a great point right there. And I like that question because it's like you want to perform at your best when it means most, right? And that's, I kind of think, what the Celtics were. We could say they were kind of coasting, but I don't know. I think to answer that question is they're turning it around right now. Obviously, we see some annoying things with the Boston Celtics, like blowing leads, not getting it done at the end of the game to close it out. We see annoying things with the Boston Celtics, but ultimately, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a big game against OKC, and they're going to start slowly upping the intensity. Now, obviously, once you come to the closer end of the season, you might not see that as much because obviously you're playing your letting your stars rest and you're getting ready for playoffs. But at the same time, I want to think this too. I want to think right now we've been battling with some injuries. All right. And I think that's where the struggles start. And then it's just kind of getting used to different lineups, matching everything up, making sure everything is good. And honestly, the biggest thing for me, I already said it, is just making good habits because this will really kill you in a playoff series. And I love what you said, Franco. Like they'll figure it out. But the thing is, we've seen it with the Boston Celtics in 2022 and 2023 season, like in that season. You guys know what I mean. But like we've seen it where they built up bad habits and it came around and bit them in the ass. I'm sorry, excuse my language, but that's the tough part. And it's hard. It's hard to flip that right in a series. Like you got to get that practice in and you got to put games away. That's just how it is because you don't want to come to that situation where you're in a game 7 and you're up by 20 at half and then all of a sudden you're only up by 2 with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see that because that's a thing that kind of scares me a little bit, but I feel like once you figure out what's going on with Porzingis and you get your lineup back together, I think the prime example is, and I'm going to say this, if we're building good habits against OKC, if we're building good habits moving forward, I won't be scared for playoffs. I don't think I am anyways. I'm ready for playoffs, but I just want to see some better habits. I want to see them putting games away and not looking at the fourth quarter. Oh my gosh, it's tied game with 2 minutes left when we were up by 20. Like, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, you know what's crazy, Seamus? That question that you asked right there, that's that's targeting the exact same question that you asked us about 2 months ago when we were all bickering like little children on this podcast. You asked the exact same question. You said, "Oh, is Al Horford and all them? They're not playing because they just want to save their energy for when it really matters." That's the exact same question.
That was
you
against the
asked.
Kings.
Yes,
That was after
that was
that was
yep.
after the
And
Celtics dropped. I think they were
and
lost by 17.
we were all arguing on this like little children. And I remember I said to you, I said that is ridiculous. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I remember at the time we were all just going at it. And we came to the conclusions. Everyone on the podcast besides you, Seamus, we said this whole on-off switch that the Celtics supposedly have, it's dumb. And you were supposedly telling us that it was because they were saving all their energy for the playoffs, and we were all just disagreeing with it. And it was all chaos it was funny, but anyways, my short answer is does this on-off switch, it doesn't concern me, and my short answer is honestly a little, because like Griffin said, it's all just about bad habits, and when that switch is off, guess what? Those habits, horrible, horrendous, terrible habits. But I mean, when it's on, it's great, right? But I think come playoffs, this whole stigma of an on-off, it just pisses me off. It just makes me so angry. This whole, like, great teams don't have on-off switches. You're just consistent. That's what makes a good team, right? I mean, look at the Warriors dynasty. Did they have an on-off switch? No. They were just always on. But apparently the Celtics team has an on-off switch. So as a Celtics fan, it just pisses me off, this whole on-off switch, because come playoffs, I have my doubts, but at the same time, yes, I'm confident that we will be on, hopefully, the entire playoff run. But just the whole stigma of this it's just dumb. It's just stupid. And it sucks because as fans, like, it is a thing. Like, I'm not saying that it's a bad take. It is a thing. Like, I'm not saying, but it's so aggravating. It's like, why? Why is this even a thing? Like, you're supposed to be the next dynasty, or maybe just to me, but you're supposed to be this next dynasty, right? And you look at all the great dynasties. There's no on-off switch. That's not a thing.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So my question for you guys, tonight, this might be a crazy take. Could tonight be kind of like they knew that they could put it away against Utah? Could that lead change be like, all right, we're going to slack off and we're going to practice because
that's what it looked like.
Situation. Do you guys think? Because call me crazy on that take, but like,
well, no, that's kind of what I was alluding to. Like, that's exactly what it looked like tonight. It looked like literally from the jump, right? We were only up 4 points at halftime. Yeah. From the jump, we came in, we were toying with the lineup, we were tested, we were just, we were shot chucking a little bit early, and we showed up like we were just gonna steamroll this team and we're going to take them lightly, and we went in up 4 points at halftime. And then we come out, we blow the doors off them in the third quarter. But then come fourth quarter, it looked exactly how they looked in the first 2 quarters, where it's like, okay, let's just, mess around, and, we're much better than this team, so we'll just bad habits and we'll just coast to this victory. And we saw it almost didn't work.
Yeah. And that's what scares me. That's what scares me right there, is because you playing around with the game. All right, I get it. You're trying to build lineups. You're trying to see what works, what doesn't. But that's what practice time is built for, kind of, in a sense. Obviously, you need game time to figure that out. But, like, that scares me because you're looking at this and you can't toy around with a win like that. You really can't, because you guys –
the playoffs, definitely not.
No, exactly. And, again, I'm saying it for the 5th time tonight, but – that's what builds bad habits right there. That's what builds bad habits. And when you're doing that during regular season, all right, teams go off to runs. And I think the Boston Celtics are going to have a great run in playoffs. But if they're used to giving up bad habits, they're going to do it in playoffs too. So they need to stop right now. This is where it's time to stop and just calm down and play their best basketball right now. It's you don't have much left of regular season. So play your hearts out right now. Go into playoffs playing your best basketball and do that through playoffs.
Am I mistaken, or was the on-off switch actually real? What I said back in January actually happened. They were 16-4 in the last 20 games, 16-4. The Boston Celtics at that point in January were purely 500.
I was comparing them to the Hawks at that time. I remember that? I was like, what is this, the Atlanta Hawks?
But this, well, we'll actually get into the Atlanta Hawks potentially later during another question on this show. But the Celtics right now, looking at their recent record, they flipped the on switch. They completely flipped the on switch.
Yeah.
And really, I do believe that the on switch will stay on for the rest of the season when everyone gets
Hopefully.
healthy and when we get to the playoffs, of course. That's when it really turns up to the next level. Yet within these individual games, I will say the Boston Celtics, there is some inconsistency in which we've been seeing as of late. We have. I mean, really looking at those lead trackers the last couple of post games, including tonight, there's been some inconsistency to the Celtics play in individual games. The thing that gives me a lot of optimism is obviously the Celtics' recent record, but along with that, the Celtics, they take care of business more often than not. Yes, they have those moments in games where you do see that lull, you see that dip, but the Celtics, they're able to ultimately outside of the Cavs game, of course, they're usually able to handle business, especially against teams they should be handling business against. We think about back in January, we went on that post game show. We argued for literally an hour on there
Yeah.
about the Celtics effort with Justin
Oh
and
yeah.
the Celtics. That was the Celtics losing to a truly mediocre King squad without De'Aaron Fox, and De'Aaron Fox hadn't been traded at that point in time. But then, of course, later in that week, the Celtics go out and lose to the Raptors. And that was really when
So
the
embarrassed.
Celtics were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and they were just not handling business against even the worst of teams in the league. The Raptors are the worst of teams. Again, another team we could get into with one of these questions later. But now I see the Celtics in their schedule. They handled the Blazers. They handled the Philadelphia 76ers. Tonight, yes, they let the Jazz come back in this game, but they handled the Utah Jazz. And then in the tough
Yeah.
games, really looking at the tough games, the
Play
Cleveland
up to
game,
yeah.
we have two Cleveland games this year that are just so annoying on the schedule from the standpoint of Celtics could be 4-0 versus Cleveland. 4-0 sweep. We're not even talking about them. They could have been our playoff record against them anyway, or can be still to this point in the season. But the Celtics in those two losses allowed Cleveland to hop back into the game. That's what they did on Friday against Cleveland. But even outside of that game, I mean, the Celtics played well for a portion of that game. The Nuggets, they win against the Nuggets, they win against the Lakers. There's a big game coming up on the horizon to really test the Celtics' strength against the Oklahoma City Thunder on the Garden floor. But I just look at the Celtics' recent stretch in total, really before All Star break, going into All Star break, and then continuously following after All Star break. It looks as if this team, their on switch was turned on, and they're back to the team in which they were from where they're just handling business on a nightly basis against teams they should handle business against, the lower tier teams. And in those tough games, we expect the Celtics to play tough against those tough opponents. But at the same time, the Celtics, they've been pulling out a pretty good margin, a pretty good amount of these games, rather. And that to me, I look back at that argument and I go, well, it happened. They did turn on the on. They turned on the from the on off switch. They turned it on. That's what the Celtics did from January. I mean, January, the Celtics weren't playing like this in any respect whatsoever. And now the Celtics, they can come out and actually compete. To me, this game would have been a loss in January. It would have been
Oh
a
yeah.
loss. The Celtics, they
The
probably
way it was
don't have the
going, yeah.
third quarter they have, which really the last two third quarters for the Celtics, the Jazz and the Lakers game, just oof. I mean, perfect third quarters from the team all around. But the Celtics don't have this third quarter in January against the Jazz. And furthermore, if that doesn't happen, the Jazz, once they battle back, the Celtics, they were known in January for being a team that did not battle back in games. If they really succumbed to another team, relinquished a lead, whatever it was, the Boston Celtics weren't coming back within a ball game yet tonight. And even in the games recently, the lead fades away for the Boston Celtics, of course, as we're talking about that um, in topic right now. Yet during the end of the game, the Celtics usually go on that last little run to close it out. That didn't happen against Cleveland, but it happened against Denver. It happened against Los Angeles. It happened against the Utah Jazz. So the Celtics, where they stand right now, I'm definitely a little bit more optimistic that that on-off switch is actually going to be on.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what do you think kind of changed from back in January when we were at our worst, from then blowing tonight's game, like we would have lost to Utah back then, to now being able to get it done? What do you think kind of changed? What's the thing that made it change for the Boston Celtics? Is it their momentum, or what do you think?
Well, that's easy. Effort.
Yeah, to me, it's a lot of their effort because defensively, I look at it a lot on that end of the floor. Defensively, the Boston Celtics, they're not putting in their effort. They can't get stops. And recently in these games, we're seeing the score. They're still able to get stops in these
Yeah.
games, and that can really make all of the difference because I talked about it on a post game prior where the Celtics really they're not a team that gets out in transition, but they're a team that likes to play with pace, and they really feed off of their defensive effort. When they're putting in effort defensively, they're going out there creating stops, creating turnovers, getting out in transition, running that way, and really just putting another defense on their toes and putting pressure on another team. That's when the Celtics are at their best. And really, for the whole month of January, it felt like the offense was stagnant, a lot of walking the ball up the floor. And really, that walking the ball up the floor came from the fact that you're not getting stops on the defensive end of the floor. You're watching the ball fall through the net, and then you're just going to walk it up. You're going to pass it and walk it up. And really, the intensity, the intent, the purpose was not in the Boston Celtics back in January, opposed to today, where it really looks like defensively is where I've seen the most change within this team in its entirety. But really, that's saying a lot about the effort of the Boston Celtics because back in January, they would create good shots here and there, but they would also take terrible shots and make terrible decisions. That's also changed on the offensive end of the floor. But defensively, you can tell a lot of the effort, the intensity is there with the Celtics team right now compared to where they were in January. And whether that was because of All-Star break, it started really before All-Star break. I'm not really sure what flipped the switch for the Celtics other than the fact of them just getting more in a groove, more in a rhythm. I think they were in a part of the season where you just kind of get tired of the season a little bit. You're kind of feeling the end portion of the first half of the season where you kind of come out with that hype in an NBA season and it kind of goes away after the NBA Cup. That's why the NBA scheduled the NBA Cup where they did within the schedule, the regular season schedule of the season. But the Celtics, I thought that a hype from the beginning of the season completely eroded from the Celtics squad, and then eventually going into All Star break, kind of gave the team something to look forward to. And then going into the season after All Star break, that's really when the sprint starts to happen. And now the Celtics sprint is all about really maintaining the health of the squad. We saw a lot of that tonight. No Al Horford, no Kristaps Porzingis. We'll have to talk about him in a second here, but also no Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is typically a very durable player, and I certainly don't doubt his durability just because he's missed two of the last three games, or rather, I guess two of the last four games. Looking at the schedule, but that clearly signals the Celtics they're starting to rest some of these guys, and they want to handle business with more unorthodox lineups if they can do that, because that's what's important for this team right now is to maintain their health and to also finish with the number two seed, which appears likely right now, considering the number two seed has stayed exactly where it is for most of the season, over 4 months. I highly doubt that changes in the next month, considering the Knicks, they're about 5.5 out with about 19 to 20 games to go, depending on who you're talking about. But the Celtics, they need to maintain the two seed and stay healthy. That's really where they are right now. I think they hit their flow, they've hit their rhythm in terms of playing well going into the playoffs. They still have to do that over the next 20 games, but really over the last 20 games, 16-4 on the last 20 games, the Celtics have completely turned the corner in terms of playing consistent basketball on an every night basis. And I really think it's just some of the motivation, some of the weather getting a little bit warmer, maybe I would say out there, depending on where they go within their schedule. But it has everything to do with internal motivation from the team. And there's a lot of reasons to me as to why the team could be more internally motivated now compared to in January when it felt like we were just months. If I mean, it felt like, yeah, it almost felt like we were years away from the next title. I mean, it was half a year. Obviously, that's not a full year, but it just felt like we were so far away from June. Now it feels like we're actually getting ready for the playoffs every single game that comes upon the schedule. But Randy or Franco, I don't know if you guys want to piggyback off that or not.
There's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
definition. Oh, sorry.
No,
There's
go
a
ahead. Frank.
there's a definition word for what you were just describing right there, and that is a championship hangover for this team. They were going through a kiss the ring mentality through January, February, or January, December, and just feeling their way through games. There weren't too many games that they were bringing a consistent basis to, kind of fixing out a couple of kinks that the team had at some points of the season. You also didn't have Kristaps Porzingis completely acclimated into the starting lineup, obviously, during when he first came back from the injury. You could see that inconsistency showing up for him, and he wasn't up to par with this team and really into the flow of this team. And you saw a lot of independent performances from this team. So you're starting to see this team start to coexist a lot more on the court and become a much more cohesive, uh, functioning team, being able to spread the ball, being able to get contributions from multiple different players on multiple different nights, being able to have that type of trust in your depth players to be able to come in these types of games and be able to put on a performance, be able to do things for this team that they're not usually asked to do, because you don't know what who's going to be around during round two of the playoffs, and you don't know what's going to happen on the court with injuries or anything like that. So just being able to take this game by game for the rest of the season, I kind of feel like the Celtics are in my GM and they just hit the simulate to the end of the regular season button just to survive through these games and get your rotation locked in, being able to get these players more in tune and get out of January, the January December slump. I think that's far past the Celtics. I don't think this is a bad habit reoccurring for them. Obviously, there are going to be games where these unorthodox lineups aren't going to work out, and especially when you're matching up against teams, I'm a big advocate for there. Everyone in the league is an NBA team for a reason. The Utah Jazz obviously missing a few players tonight, but you still had some good performances out of players like John Collins and Bryce Sensabaugh off the bench, and also Colin Sexton was able to push the Celtics during that fourth quarter. So these teams are always going to have that red dot on the Celtics forehead, and just being able to handle that and knowing when to come out and be able to close out a game like they did tonight is really all you can ask for this team for the next upcoming stretch of the schedule.
Yeah, you know what's crazy about the Jazz? Like, you look at their record and you look at their roster with a fully healthy roster, like on paper, that's not a bad team, right? I mean,
No.
Colin Sexton, John Collins, Walker Kessler, Laurie Markkinen, Keontae George has been tremendous. I mean, you look on paper, that's a good
Danny
team. Like, that's
and
a
Danny we
good
trust.
team.
I'll
Yeah,
always support Danny over here in
yeah, like
Boston.
it's crazy. Yeah, Danny, yeah, like that's crazy. Like I don't understand like what is going on in Utah. I mean, I get we're in the NBA, right? So like other teams are obviously better, but you look at that team and they're not bad. They got some talent and they have some young kids that we saw tonight who are pretty good off the bench. So I mean, if they get healthy, I don't know about this year. It's probably too late, but I mean, in the future, they could have a good squad, really. But back to kind of you guys' point,
There.
kind of back to Griffin's point, really, and Seamus's point. The other thing, remember in January, February, or no, January, a little February, we were playing 500 ball, and you know, we were talking about players and people on the trading block. Do we need to switch up Pritchard in the starting lineup? This and that. And really, do you guys remember the turning point? The turning point to me, and I don't know what you guys think was the turning point, besides the effort and the urgency. But to me, it was when Derek White gained his confidence. That is really like the if there was, I mean, as a collective, you know, there's things you do as a collective that makes your team better. Obviously, like tonight we saw as a collective, they rebounded great. But on a side note, on an individual note, right? When Derek White finally got confident and could play basketball again, that is really, to me, when the Celtics started playing good basketball. And I mean, it's really no coincidence, right? You have one of the best, if not the best, defensive guard in the NBA playing terrible on offense. And then, just ironically, as soon as he starts even playing a lick of offense, the entire team just completely does a 360, and now we're back to playing 7-1 ball in 8 games, or 8-2 ball in 10 games, right? And it's really no coincidence to me. I don't know what you guys thought, but to me, the big turning point back in January and February was when Derek White finally gained confidence again.
I want to say, oh, sorry, you go.
Go ahead,
Seamus.
Griffin. Go ahead.
All right, I want to say, I completely agree with that take.
Yeah.
I think Derek White, you guys might call me crazy, is the glue to this team. Obviously, I think
Well,
Drew.
he is.
What was that?
He is, yeah. 100%.
Yeah. But Drew Holiday got you over that hump because you saw Porzingis was out for a lot last year in our playoff run. But when Derek White is playing at his best and he's giving you blocks, he's being a issue on the defensive side of the ball, that's when the Boston Celtics are playing their best. And it really is. And it shows. Like, that slump is when Derek White was in his slump. When he turned it around, the Boston Celtics started getting wins. And it shows you how much of a key asset he is to this team.
Yeah, and to me, Derek White, I look at the turnaround of Derek White, and I would say there is some correlation there within the Celtics turnaround in the season and Derek White's turnaround this season. And Derek White, he's such an important player for the Boston Celtics within their rotation. And I would definitely say that looking at his season, looking at the Celtics season, definitely correlates between him playing well and the Celtics not playing well. And we've really set a nickname for Derek White as Derek White has set the floor for the Boston Celtics as the floor setter. He's really that floor for the Boston Celtics. No matter if Derek White is playing well, there's only a level the Celtics can really go down to if Derek White is playing well, considering the amount of talent on the Boston Celtics roster. And Derek White in total this season, he's had his struggles, but really the last month and a half, he's came out and he's looked like a much more confident player. He's looked like a player who's found his flow, found his rhythm again, found his confidence, of course, just shooting the basketball as we're talking about here. But defensively, I mean, Derek White, really the thing that stood out about the Boston Celtics earlier this season that was really putting us into almost panic mode earlier in January was the fact a lot of uncharacteristic things were happening with the Boston Celtics squad, considering some of the really what we thought was the intangible, can always rely on guys were not doing their job up to par. It was guys like Drew Holiday. It was guys like Derek White at the beginning of the season, to the biggest Celtics acquisitions in the last 3 years. Those two guys in particular not playing well alongside the rest of the Celtics outside of really Tatum, Pritchard. They were the two players consistently playing well for most of this season. Brown, he had his moments as well, but for most of the year, Brown had been up and down up until about the last really month or so. And the Celtics, as a team, they just weren't getting after it. Defensively, offensively, it was a mess. They were making a lot of bad decisions. But what was really stark was some of the players who were not relied upon at that point in time to be great every single night were typically players you could rely on every single night to be great. Guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday specifically. And I really think right now in the schedule, we've seen both of those guys come out and play well. And Drew Holiday, really recently, I don't know about you guys, but Drew Holiday's injury seems a little bit concerning to me. The mallet finger seems a bit concerning. Just anytime you're tearing a ligament anywhere in your body and playing basketball, seems a little bit concerning to myself. But at the same time, Drew Holiday was out there tonight. Griffin, you mentioned it earlier, being happy that we have Drew Holiday, but also he was out there the other night as well against the Los Angeles Lakers. And you can see how much Drew Holiday really impacts the game when he's involved in the game. Outside of those two games, though, Drew Holiday's missed a pretty good amount of time lately, along with Kristaps Porzingis, who will get who we'll get into a little bit later. But looking at this entire Boston Celtics club, I mean, really, the turnaround has been in multiple players alongside Derek White as well. When Drew Holiday hits the court, when Al Horford is really playing well, Peyton Pritchard has been more consistent as of late. Sam Hauser, he's given us a little bit more, and that's really going to bring us now into player spotlight because Sam Hauser tonight, he is our SeatGeek player spotlight. Sam Hauser, my goodness, who knew Sam Hauser could actually have this game? He has really been a part of what's also turned the Celtics ship around, although you might not give Sam Hauser the entire piece of the pie for the Celtics turnaround. He certainly has been playing a little bit better as of late, especially the second half of the season. And tonight was the cherry on top for Sam Hauser. 33 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal for Sam Hauser. 11 of 23 from the floor. Sam Hauser shoots, and he's 9 of 19 from 3. Sam Hauser is our SeatGeek player of the night, player of the game, player spotlight, of course. And don't forget, go enter in the code Celtics Weekly to the SeatGeek. When you go check out at SeatGeek, go enter the code Celtics Weekly for 20% off your first purchase at SeatGeek. Go hook the family up, go hook yourself up, go out there and view a Celtics game, for crying out loud. It's a great performance, I've heard, on the parquet floor every single time. But Sam Hauser, he is tonight's player spotlight, and he is of that slew of players who have been I wouldn't give Sam Hauser the most credit for really turning the Celtics around, not as much as Derek White, not as much as some of these other players. But at the same time, Sam Hauser has played better as of late, considering some of his jump shots have actually gone in. Now, he's still putting up some games where he might be 1 of 5, 1 of 7, but those are a little bit more few and far between compared to the beginning of the season. Now, tonight was nothing like that for Sam Hauser. He was 9 of 19 from the floor, 33 points on the night for Sam Hauser, 23 of those coming in the third quarter when the Celtics avalanche happened. And he really was the Celtics avalanche for this game. I believe 7 3-pointers in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken, tonight. 7 for Sam Hauser. So he was inching upon historical grounds tonight. Sam Hauser, he really took over the role. No Jason Tatum tonight, but hey, 33 points out of Sam Hauser, and it caps off a time period where the Boston Celtics, they see 46 out of Jason Tatum and 37 out of Jaylen Brown on the same night. They're two superstars. And then you go to the Blazers game, the Boston Celtics witness Pritchard over 40 points, White over 40 points. And then, of course, you go to the Lakers game, you watch Jason Tatum drop 40 that night. And now tonight, Sam Hauser comes out and drops 33 off the bench. I mean, this has been a prolific scoring week for the Boston Celtics, whether it's been their star players, whether it's been some of their role players, the high-level role players, and Pritchard and White, or now Sam Hauser off the bench, 33 points on the night. And Sam Hauser actually might have had the starting nod, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did.
Tonight for Jason Tatum, but typically a bench player for the Boston Celtics. But 33 points on the night for Sam Hauser. Sam Hauser, this was easily his best game of the entire season, and the first time he's won player spotlight since early December against the Pistons. He also went off in a game against the Pistons. He goes off tonight against the Utah Jazz. But Franco, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Sam Hauser and this game he put forth tonight for the Boston Celtics?
I mean, how are you going to be able to beat the Celtics when you're having contribution from the 8th guy on your rotation like this? He's doing such an amazing job being able to play his role as the sharpshooter on this team tonight. He was able to express that, especially with the more open shot opportunities. And you can see the tenure that he has on this team. He's been around this roster for numerous years. He's well acclimated into the lineup, and this is exactly where you need to feed him. If Sam Hauser can give us a quarter of the performance he gave us today with the segmented amount of time tonight, he played 35 minutes. You're not going to be seeing Sam Hauser for 35 minutes unless there's a serious problem with the Celtics injury report. But there is a lot of good to be able to pull from this. Being able to have 6 rebounds, being able to guard up on players. There was a couple of matchups against Sexton and their other guards. He's a player that we've had expressed some concern of. If he's not scoring, what are you doing on the court? As Rob likes to say, this team, or with Sam Hauser, we brought in Torrey Craig due to those concerns. If he can really be that 3-and-D type of player and not just a sharpshooter off the bench. But he's answered a few of these questions, and he's shown that he can be a reliable player when it comes down to it. Obviously, you're not going to put the weight of the world on his shoulders and not going to really expect these types of moments. But when it comes down to a third quarter and round 1 or round 2, and Sam Hauser is able to gain that hot hand during the playoffs, I have no problem with the Celtics having that trust in them to keep them in for a few more minutes and be able to keep on letting it fly, because tying a record for the most 3-pointers in a quarter is something that speaks for itself. With someone that talented, you need to be able to utilize them, and the Celtics did that perfectly tonight.
I want to say this. It's so much fun watching Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard shoot the basketball when they're on. I just had to say that. But I love what Sam Hauser did tonight. If this means Sam Hauser is back, the league must be scared, because the thing that we've concerned is Sam Hauser has been a problem for the Boston Celtics. And we've talked a lot about who's that guy to replace him. Is it Torrey Craig? Is it Baylor Shireman? Like,
Jordan Walsh.
yeah, Jordan Walsh. Like, we've been talking about a lot of players. Who's going to replace Sam Hauser? Because in a playoff game, we don't want this guy going out there and ruining the game for us. But tonight, he had an incredible performance. And if this means he's back, then that's so good, because he's that player that's going to give you that well-needed 3 in the corner when we're on. This is big for the Boston Celtics. Now, hopefully, it's like a Derek White turnaround. I'm hoping that, all right, yeah, he had a slump this season. Maybe you could give some credit to his lower back. Maybe you could just say, all right, things haven't been going all right. It's just a little slump. Everyone gets into a slump. But tonight, he had a great performance, and I hope this is just the shift in his season. And maybe it kind of correlates to what we were saying earlier, that the Boston Celtics, what was that?
Oh, nothing.
Oh, yeah. Maybe it correlates like earlier with the Boston Celtics, kind of how they were starting off slow. And now when we're starting to pick it up, look who's doing good, Sam Hauser. And that kind of goes back to it being a team effort. We need everyone to be on for us to be at the top of our game. It's just how it is. We need Porzingis to be healthy. We need Sam Hauser to be shooting the 3-ball well. We need Derek White to do what he does every night. And we just need that full team. The thing that makes the Boston Celtics so great is the team effort. It's the team chemistry. Now, if Sam Hauser's back, I'm all for it, because he could really affect a game.
Yeah, well, to me, this type of performance out of a guy like Sam Hauser is exactly the type of performance that I feel like we get from individual players each game. And obviously it's nice when we get the Tatum and Brown, they both drop 30 or almost 40, whatever. But that's not going to happen every night. And it's performances like this, right? If we can get Tatum out there giving us, his 25 and Brown giving us 20, right? And then we just have another guy like Sam Hauser or a Pritchard, or maybe next season it's Shireman who develops, or whoever it may be. If we could just get that third guy off the bench who can be that spark, right? And tonight it was Sam Hauser. We've seen Pritchard go off for 30. We've seen Porzingis get 20, right? Everyone on this team has the ability to have a night like this. But it's when Brown and Tatum both are just, they're consistent numbers. They're fine. They average, they get their average, right? 25, 20 points, right? Nothing crazy. But if we can get that other guy off the bench to give us, and I'm not saying 30 points is, whatever, but just a consistent, right? And in the earlier this season, it was Pritchard giving us a good 15 to 20 per game, right? We've seen him slow down a little bit, but he's still pretty consistent, right? If we can get Hauser to give us that consistent 15, right? 10 to 15, that would, I think that is what brings us from good to great. And tonight was great. And another thing with Sam Hauser, right? I feel like the media a lot, and even us in our own group chat, we pick apart Sam Hauser on defense all the time, right? Myself included, right? I'm the first one to say, get Sam Hauser off the court. He's a traffic cone on defense. But look, in the past couple of weeks, right, we've seen Sam Hauser, in the words of Charles Barkley, Shaq, all those guys over on TNT, he's been moving the puppies pretty good. Not gonna lie, right? I mean, take away that performance, that defensive effort, when we had Hauser matching up in Cleveland against like Donovan Mitchell, right? We can't expect him to win that matchup. I'm not gonna criticize him too much, but take away that performance, we have seen Hauser play pretty good defense the last couple of weeks.
Well, Sam Hauser, tonight's performance from Sam Hauser, it seems like he wanted to shut up all the haters.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
really all the naysayers out there. It's like, take a walk from Sam Hauser, because Sam Hauser, he can do this in an NBA game. And what's really impressive about this performance is it comes in the slew of a long line of impressive scoring performances from the Celtics this week, as I already mentioned. But the fact the Celtics have another player on their bench who can just go out there and jack up 30, I mean, that's really something special. But I even look at Sam Hauser tonight and his performance. For some reason, it's like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard. Every time they play a team like the Jazz, we might face the Pelicans on the schedule. Maybe the Raptors come around every once in a while. The Hornets, these truly terrible teams, right? The Wizards, right? It's just somebody has to generate the meme. It's Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. I mean, really, those two players, specifically Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, when it comes to flaming on bad teams, just absolutely scorching bad teams. I mean, they look like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen out there. They look like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson on the Dream Team. Looking at Sam Hauser's performance in the third quarter, I'm seriously sitting there going, this is just funny. This is funny. Like Sam Hauser, we're sitting there against the Cleveland Cavaliers going, get him off the floor. And then tonight against the Utah Jazz, he's the Celtics' best player out on the floor during the third quarter as a complete flamethrower. And that's just where I look at it. There are just different occasions, different moments in the season, different spots in the schedule. So where I look at this game and go, I'm not putting a ton of stock into this game for the Boston Celtics. It's a maintain your health, come out with the win. Whatever happens in between there. Yes, they gave up the lead at one point in time, a 24-point lead, but the Celtics still came out with this win. And it's a night where Sam Hauser, he's a guy who goes for 33 points. I mean, this is somebody we've been wanting to just see 10 points out of this season, because we know he can average that on the season. It's just the fact of the matter, Sam Hauser has not put up those numbers at all this year. And yet tonight, Sam Hauser goes out there, scores 33 points, and it really feels like the Celtics are just kind of jacking around out there. But really, a player right now I'm looking at and going, there's no jacking around with this player, because this is getting more and more serious out here. And it's about Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis releases what I would deem a slightly concerning tweet during the game, really an hour into the game. And this is how it reads. Kristaps Porzingis says, I have been dealing with some viral illness that we haven't been able to fully identify yet, which my eyebrows are raised right now. I am recovering and getting better, but still working my way back to full strength to help this team. Thanks for support, and I'm hoping for a healthy return soon. So Kristaps Porzingis, he's missed including tonight, 7 of the last ball games for the Boston Celtics. And after a slew of great health for Kristaps Porzingis and what seemed like was just a simple illness, now seems like it's something serious for Kristaps Porzingis. And really, I look at that tweet and I go, I'm not exactly full of optimism after looking at that tweet. And Kristaps, of course, releases it during the game, about an hour into the game. And Kristaps not playing tonight, hasn't played 7 of the last 8 ball games. And this illness just seems to be something a little bit more serious. But as of right now, what are your guys' concerning, or what is your concern level for Kristaps Porzingis? We'll start with you, Franco.
Viral illness that hasn't been determined yet. Those are some interest. That's not the message you want to hear from your doctor when you go in for the checkup.
Really no. That's like those are the worst words. I'm sitting there reading the tweet, going, "What is this? We don't know about it yet." Real?
I mean,
it's March.
They have to be able to diagnose what's going on with him, and I'm really hoping that it's nothing serious and not an illness that can hinder him in a physical aspect outside of basketball. And I hope that this can be diagnosed, and obviously hearing that he is improving and feeling better is a great sign for the Boston Celtics, but it just continues to defend our saying of keep the bubble wrap on him. It's now we have to get a hazmat suit around him. We'll bubble wrap hazmat suit. I forget what show it was, but there was some show that generated a meme of that. But they have it's just something that really as you said, raises the eyebrows and causes for some concern, but obviously with the release of the information that he is feeling better is all we can hope for, and wishing him the best of luck in his recovery.
Okay, so we talk about concern meter. I would say right now, out of the 10, I'm at a 6. I'm gonna say this. I'm no doctor, but from my perspective, this winter has sucked with sicknesses. So it's totally possible that he's caught like several different sicknesses and like he's just battling through them. That's totally a possibility, I guess. Because like what do you mean it's something that we don't know about? Like, okay, I don't know about that. But the thing about Porzingis is it's at a 6 because could this just be injury management? Obviously, you don't want to come out and say it because if you're healthy, you're supposed to play, like you're not supposed to just sit. So could we just say, and this tweet might have built it up a little more so it doesn't look like, all right, you're just sitting, that's from my perspective. Now, does it alarm me? Yes, that's why it's at a 6, because with Porzingis, it's there's a lot better basketball teams out there this year. You have the Cavs, who I think we could ultimately face in the playoffs, where you're gonna need Porzingis for those games. You probably are. You definitely will. You're gonna need Porzingis when you face the Thunder or the Nuggets. Like you need Porzingis for those big games. So does it alarm me? Yes, because could this be something else? Could this be something bigger than what we're seeing? And it's just not out. It alarms me a lot, but at the same time, I think that kind of 4%, like on that, so it's not a 10 out of 10, is maybe it's just injury management. They know they could get wins without Porzingis, and they're like, all right, we're not going to die out there without you. So if we rest you up and make sure you're 100% for playoffs, that's what we would prefer, because we don't want to take any risks. So I'm kind of in that boat. It could be injury management because, come on, how can you – you're right. Eyebrows are raised. Like what? What do you mean by that? So it's definitely a little concerning, but is it through the roof? No.
Yeah, you know what's crazy, Griffin? You actually, I have nothing to say. You literally just said everything that I was literally just holding in. Every single thing. Like you mentioned, right? I'm just gonna reiterate it, right? I'm just gonna say right now, yeah, to me, that is just straight up, I don't wanna say BS, but it's to me, especially like if he came out and said, "Oh, I have COVID. Oh, I have the flu." Okay, sure. He's not gonna lie about what he has. Like if he actually has something, like, if he has it, he has it. He's not gonna lie about COVID or whatever. But the fact that he basically said he doesn't know, they don't know. To me, in my head, that went off like, okay, right? I mean, what you have is a bad case of the I don't want Boston fans to get pissed at me again. That's what you have. And so right now we have no idea what it is. But to me, it's he probably tweaked an ankle or he's got a calf strain. And if I'm being completely honest right now, guys, like you said, Griffin, shut him down until the playoffs. Just shut him down.
Yes,
Just
100%.
like for real. It's we've locked up the second seed, right? We're basically it's basically a lock at this point. We're gonna match up with either the Knicks or the Cavs at some point, or both at some point in the playoffs, right? We're gonna need Porzingis. I mean, we saw our interior defense tonight, right? The defense in the paint was abysmal, right? And part of that was not having Horford too. But come playoffs, we need Horford and Porzingis. I'm sorry, but I'm 1,000% taking Horford and Porzingis over Kata and Cornette, and I think that's pretty obvious. But come playoffs, I think it's very important to have all four of them at 100% because if Porzingis does need a game, say we're up 3-0 in a series, and he needs a game off, will we be comfortable still getting that sweep if we have Horford and Kata out there, or Horford and Cornette as our 1-2 for our bigs, right? But back to Porzingis, it's just, to me, we just need to err on the side of caution. And with a player as fragile as Kristaps Porzingis, it's so tremendously like we just need to have Porzingis in the play. He can't be missing any games like in the playoffs. Like in all 4 rounds, we need him all 16. Well, probably more than 16 games, but I'm just saying we need him in every single game. And these meaningless games right now, I'm not willing to really give up his health for the playoffs in these next couple games.
Well, Kristaps Porzingis tonight, Kristaps Porzingis, didn't play the 7th of the last eight games for the Boston Celtics. And really, I look at that and go, something might actually be up here. Because if the Celtics were really just resting Kristaps Porzingis, I really do believe he'd be rested more in the sense of playing every other game, maybe not playing 2 games, playing 1 game, and him being added to the rotation every now and then. 7 of the last 8 games, he's just out. I mean, he's been out for 6 straight games now. And to me, I look at that and go, that is not all that normal for resting players. You usually don't rest players for multiple weeks like that. You might rest them for 2 games here, there, or 1 game, but really 2 weeks plus, that's something that's really not normal. And to me, that's where it gets into the more optimistic side is the more conspiratorial side about this whole injury business. I mean, really, the optimistic side is, oh, he's resting. The team is really sitting him out. He'll be fine. He doesn't know what this illness is. And really, the conspiratorial part is, well, what if he comes out with an illness and he goes and tweets about it and makes him look like he's really trying to fight back from this illness? And instead of the entire fan base being mad at Kristaps Porzingis for not playing and resting, they're actually praying for him to come back healthy, and they're really rooting for him on his road to recovery if he was, of course, staging that. But to me, that is a more conspiratorial side of this entire thing. It's, oh, is he resting? Is it Kristaps Porzingis just sitting out? The Celtics are sitting him out. I think with the tweet we saw today, something that indicates to me is he doesn't know when he's coming back to the basketball floor. He doesn't know.
Well,
I don't think he
Seamus,
knows whatsoever. I mean,
Seamus,
go ahead, Randy.
no, I was gonna say, here's the thing though, guys, right? Isn't there I don't know exactly how like NBA logistics work here, but on the injury report, right, we obviously see it says illness, and you can't lie about that. Like I'm pretty sure like that's pretty like
No.
straight. Like there have been like investigations where it's like, well, I'm gonna call out someone we're pretty familiar with like Embiid, right? Where he was just getting rested for just strictly load management and rest. And there have been like serious investigations. I don't know if it was with Embiid, but I know for a fact there have been like internal investigations about, okay, are we just giving him the night off and saying it's for whatever, but it's really just for rest. And that's the other thing. Like, can they even do like if they're putting illness, like I mean, I guess if he had like a mild fever, but then he has like an ankle tweak or like a calf injury, they could just say illness because technically they're not lying, but it's like, it's like a white lie. It's like, no, there's something bigger going on here. And we're just going to use that, 99.5 fever to just, but I'm curious to what you guys think. Like, isn't there some sort of like protocols where it's like, you can't lie about that on injury reports, at least anymore.
You can't. I think it was Kawhi, maybe.
Yeah,
It
or
was either
something, but
Kawhi
I
or
don't
Embiid.
know.
Yeah. And you can't. And that's why like it scares me because do they launch an investigation on
That's what I'm
Porzingis?
saying.
Because
Like, I'm confused.
that tweet, that's not anything. Like I get it.
They don't
If
mess around with it. Like
no,
this stuff.
they don't. The NBA is so strict on that. So that's kind of definitely.
I mean, Seamus, what do you think? Because, like I said, I don't know what the policy is, but I know for a fact you cannot be like, oh, I have an illness, but really it's just for rest. Like.
Yeah, you can't lie about an injury report, but I know you can say miscellaneous things. Like tonight, Jason Tatum's out with knee tendinopathy. Like Jason Tatum and his knee tendinopathy. I mean, I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about this moving
Yeah,
forward.
he'll be fine tomorrow.
I mean, really, those are the type of terms you'll hear. Tendinopathy.
Or like a knee
What
strain.
What are the contusions? Right, the
Oh, yeah,
strains,
those- yeah.
strains, contusions, tendinopathy. Those are the terms you'll hear on the injury report when guys are really sitting out and they're resting because sure they
but
can be
illness though, like illness, it's like.
but
you
that's where
can't- I
I'm
mean,
saying this is actually more
like-
concerning to me than on the surface of just, oh, he might be resting because Kristaps Porzingis, if he wanted to just rest, he'd be out every other game and it would just be, oh, ankle management or calf management or
Or be
strain,
like
whatever.
ankle strain.
Yeah, and now it's, well, he's out with an illness. He's been out the last 6 games with an illness, and he just tweeted out something that to me sounds like he is not coming back anytime soon, or hasn't. I shouldn't say anytime soon, but has no idea when he's coming back. If he's fighting a viral illness, I think too that could be something regarding surgery. Maybe he had 2 surgeries last year, if I'm not mistaken, or right, 2 surgeries for Kristaps Porzingis,
Yeah.
1 or 2 surgeries, regardless. Had himself operated on his legs last year. Could be within something surrounding his legs, could be something else. But the fact he doesn't know what the illness is, I that's where I look at that tweet and go, I don't know if he knows when he's going to be back, and that is kind of scary from the standpoint of if he has some kind of viral infection within the incisions of where he had his last operation or wherever.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
If he had plates, screws, whatever put in to where he was being operated on, what if they have to operate on Kristaps Porzingis again? What if he can't?
I didn't even think of that.
I'm going worst case scenario here, but I'm saying that tweet. I feel
Prepare
like
for the worst, hope for the best.
I feel like we've seen that tweet before, though. I feel like we've seen tweets like that where it's like, oh, this isn't signaling that he's coming back. It's
I know. I
signaling
didn't
that
even think about that. I was thinking more
he's
like,
not coming back soon.
Yeah,
No,
I was thinking more like something else, but no. Now that
he
you
doesn't
say
have
that,
to run.
That makes sense because you think about, like
Cool.
with the flu or something, like you think about it, I had the flu recently and I was sick for about a week, and then you recover, you have a slow recovery, like conditioning back, but it's not 7 games worth. Like I didn't even think about that, and that's scary to
Me
think
neither.
about because that's something. But do you think with infection though that would come up a lot sooner? I feel like.
Maybe.
I'm not sure when an infection can arise, but to me, I know that people have had problems way far away from their surgery date
Yeah, that's
from
true.
just
Yeah.
having certain like that to me, like I don't know what Kristaps Porzingis exactly had done, but I know if you have screws put in, if you have a plate put in, if you have artificial things inside of you, your immune system, obviously in the body, attacks foreign objects to the body. So if there's anything running through you, virus, whatever it is, the immune system attacks it. Well, if the immune system has an adverse reaction to whatever hardware is put into the body during surgery, well, then it could attack that as well, and that's when those infections arise. And that to me, if I'm looking at Kristaps Porzingis's history and his health as of late, I look at that tweet tonight and go, WTF? This is not good. I'm just saying it right now. He could be back 2 games from now, and we'll all be sitting here going, well, I guess he's back. Great. But I'm on that orange meter right now, the panic level
Yeah.
of this injury, because I'm going 6 straight games miss, 7 of the last 8. He doesn't know what the infection is. He just sent out a tweet to let everybody know, try to calm him down. But really, his tweet, the way it was structured too, you can tell he typed it, so he didn't have some kind of social media person do it. I think Kristaps Porzingis did it on his own. Um,
Yeah.
but sometimes those occasions too will release more because if it's from a team, right, or if it's from a news outlet, right, it's structured, it's very filtered, it's very okay. We're going to structure it like this to give it out to the public, so there's no reaction from it one way or the other. Well, Kristaps Porzingis, if he wrote the tweet himself, when I was reading it, I was going, oh, if the team would never release something like this, or news outlets would never release something like this, like where I'm reading it going, okay, so you have no idea what the infection is? No clue. I mean that to me is really what's ringing alarm bells here because no idea. I mean that's a problem. That is a
That's
legitimate problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Franco.
yeah. You just can't be like courteous with these types of injuries or this type of infection. It's kind of from reading it. It had me worried from the start of reading it. I just don't like the fact that it's undiagnosed what is going on and the fact that he felt the need to reach out and be able to put that information out. I think that I would have assumed that would have been a responsibility that the Celtics PR team would have taken full jump ahead of and been able to tell him what to release and tell him what information we can give to the general public, what we want to keep a little bit more under wraps. And I definitely hearing those words, it makes me stray away from the conspiracy of this being a rest play or anything like that. And you need to be much more on the safer end with these types of things. And one thing that the team needs to be ready for is to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. Hopefully, hopefully he's just had the toilet run for the past week and hasn't been able to make it onto the game without getting back on a toilet 15 minutes later. That's what we can hope for. But from the sounds of things, it's just not sounding like something that needs is going to be resolved within a set amount of time. He could be, like you said, Seamus, he could be back against the Thunder for all we know. But until we get a diagnosis and during a team press conference, we have a medical report come out from the team. We just don't know what to expect at this point. So making sure to have these guys ready to roll is Al Horford, Namias Queta, Luke Cornett. That's going to be imperative and something to really keep an eye on and closely monitor as we near closer to the end of the regular season.
I want to say too, I feel like definitely Seamus that bumped the worry level up to a 7. All right, we added one on. I won't lie. Um, so a little more alarmed now that you said that. But I also want to say this. I feel like we're thinking the most negative things possible. You also need to still carry some optimism with it. So I feel like realistically, like, all right, Porzingis, I'm a big fan on Porzingis. I love Porzingis, but
Who is it?
I would kind of stay away from tweeting that because that,
Yeah.
for one, you're making your situation worse. All right, I get it. You have fans confused on why does it still say illness, but get off social media. Don't tweet that
Let
because
the
now
team do
we're.
that.
What was up?
Let the team do that.
Yeah, let the team do that because now we're here. We're like, all right, well,
Speculation.
yeah, it's speculations, and it's like we gotta think optimistic. We gotta think, all right, maybe he's had several sicknesses, and it's just been putting him down and further back. But and then we also got to think of maybe this is a way where kind of he was sick, but now we're kind of just injury management. I would just say shut him down till playoffs. I think Randy said it earlier. Just let him rest. Like if we're getting into this, Boston is more than capable to sustain throughout the rest of the regular season. Shut him down until we need him most, and that is in playoffs. Because that's alarming, and that
Yeah,
scares
we'll lose our whatever games we're gonna lose in the regular season. I still think we're a lock for the second seed. But come playoffs, like you said, Griffin, that is when we need them the most, right? Like I mentioned earlier, like fine, we'll lose however many games left, right? We'll lose a couple, that's fine, then we'll get mad, I'll be pissed off, whatever. And let
Just for
me be
fun.
mad. Let us let us be mad. Let me rage bait a little bit. But come playoffs, that's when we need them the most. So it's like, I'll suck it up for 3, 4, 5 games, however many games we lose.
That's a
If
lot.
if it's fine, we'll give it 3 games. Say we lose 3 games the rest of the season without Porzingis, right? I'll suck it up. I'll rage bait a little. I'll get mad, but after that, come playoffs, when we hoist banner number 19, guess who's not going to be mad? This guy. So it's fine.
Now that does raise the question of if Kristaps Porzingis doesn't play in the NBA playoffs for the Boston Celtics, in which, well, we saw Kristaps not play for the Celtics most of last year's playoff run. The Celtics still get it done. We did see that last year, but if Kristaps doesn't play this playoff run for the Boston Celtics, can the Celtics still get it done? Franco?
I want to say yes, and I'm gonna add a little bit more confidence to that as I get going. But I think that this team, if there is a player on the Celtics roster that the Celtics are prepared to play without the most, it is Kristaps Porzingis because they have been in multiple stretches, including the beginning of the season and the playoff stretch where we didn't really get to see him much until the end of the playoffs, and it's going to be something that the team is going to have to adapt to. Obviously, the major concern is will the guys behind Kristaps Porzingis be able to manage that load throughout an entire playoff stretch? We know that they can handle it on a game-to-game basis, and there's obviously a drop-off, and missing out on Kristaps Porzingis on the court is definitely a major impact, and it is something you cannot even replicate with having two bigs on the court, or any way you put it. You just cannot make up for that amount of athleticism, that defensive IQ, and that tenacity on the boards, and just that 7'3" and whatever his wingspan is. You can't make up for that. And the team, and the ability to stretch the court out 35 feet is something that really the Celtics will miss if it does come down to that point. Obviously, here on Celtics Talk Weekly, we're just preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. That's just the signature statement for what's going on with Kristaps Porzingis because of the poor management, as Griffin was able to point out. I'm not the biggest fan that Kristaps Porzingis was the one to put out that post. I would have much rather heard Joe Mazzulla brush off interview question which we're so accustomed to. If he asked about how Kristaps Porzingis is feeling and what injury he's going through, he would say that we'll be assessing that the next game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's all I needed to hear, because now my mind is running as a Celtics fan, trying to figure out what could be the issue, and turning back, like we've said, that we can only hope that it is some sort of rest management, and at the same time, I just don't see Kristaps being a player who wants to do that. He is quoted of saying during the NBA Finals last year that I want to die on this court rather than sit out and watch my team win a championship without me. So I just am really expecting to hear more news come from this side of things, but obviously I think the Celtics can manage without Kristaps Porzingis. Does it lower their chances? Yes, and it is almost drastically.
So I want to say this from a Boston Celtics fan, 100%. They get it done without Kristaps Porzingis. From a NBA fan, seeing all the competition and stuff, yes, they get it done, but it's a little more challenging. I think about this with Porzingis. I love, Franco, what you said, kind of how they're experienced to playing without Porzingis. I mean, geez, last year during the season, they didn't play with him for a while. During playoffs, they didn't play with him for pretty much the whole playoff run. And then this year, we obviously haven't seen a lot of Porzingis again. So it's like, yes, we are very experienced without playing with Porzingis. Now, when he's on the court, it's a completely different difference maker. Is there any way you could pull up what he said again? I don't know if you can, because
Yes.
I kind of want to highlight something. So I look at this and it says, I'm still recovering and getting better, but I'm still working back to full strength to help this team. So basically what I take away from that is that he's still working in practice. And that's what kind of alarms me, and is like, is this still sickness if he's still working back and getting strength? I feel that means he's conditioning, but hoping for a healthy return soon. So he's obviously optimistic about it. Now, you're good now. You could take it away because I have a question. Obviously, last time I was sent health. All right, we don't want to talk about it, but this is a question.
Live
What?
on air as well.
Yeah, I can't believe that. I can't get over it. But
It happens to everybody. I mean, we all thought it happened
first
when
time ever.
Luka was traded. Everybody.
I can't believe it. So I have a question. Was his comment that he said about the LA game, was that real? Or am I getting I'm clarifying.
I think it was. No, I think
Kristaps
no,
Porzingis'
no,
comments?
because basically the comment was some random tweeted out at Porzingis on a post and said, "Will you be available for tonight's game or tomorrow's game against the Lakers?" Which was several days back, and Porzingis just simply said yes.
So that gives me a lot more optimism right there, because if he thought he was going to play and they probably shut him down and they're like, no, we want you to get more rest. I think that's more so the Celtics team kind of being like, I bet Porzingis, from what you guys
Load
said
management.
from last year, like he's like, I'll die on that court. I think he's dying to get back on the court and play with the team and play basketball. I think it's more than that. I think it might be, to be honest, the Celtics team, because if he said yes, then he was expecting to play, but they might be shutting him down and they might be like, hey, you're not going to play. And he might be upset about that. So and he might not be allowed to, because, he can't say that online. He can't say the Celtics team is shutting me down and I can't play. So he might have said that because he might have frustration and he wants to show the fans, look, I'm not allowed to say what I'm allowed to say. Like, I can't say what I truly think and how I feel about how they're treating me, holding me back from this so-called sickness, but I want to play. And that tweet shows that he wants to play. He wants to get out on the court. But is there more behind the story than we know? I think the answer to that question is 100%.
I gotta get the tinfoil. I gotta get the tinfoil hat out for this conversation.
It's crazy though. Like,
discussion, we need the tinfoil hats.
no, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. The whole situation is like, my question then, I guess, would be, if he is shut down, is every single injury report just gonna say illness, illness, illness? Like, you can't do that for a whole month straight. Like, what is he, like, deathly ill? Like, no, you can't do that. Like, you're gonna have to come up with something better than that. Like, I mean,
so
you can't just give everyone illness for 4 weeks straight, and then, I mean, even as, like, internal, like, NBA, like, they're gonna be like, what? What? Like, you can't do that. I mean, like, I don't know.
Randy, so how long do you think until the NBA notices that and they launch?
That's my thing. Like, that's my thing.
That's not good.
I mean, it's been what we said. It's been 6 games straight. I mean, say he takes another 5 off, like, or 4 off, right? That puts him at 10 games sat out, 10 straight games. I mean, like you said, Griffin, when does that kind of bring a red flag or alarm the NBA on? They start questioning not Porzingis but just the Celtics. Like, what's going on over here?
Yeah,
Well,
and that scares me.
Well, I don't know if it would go that far, because I'm of the idea that Kristaps Porzingis might actually have an illness right now, because I just don't see a purpose as to why, when you're rolling the way the Celtics are rolling right now, really gaining their team cohesion, their team chemistry for the season, why would you go and sit out Kristaps Porzingis for 10 straight games, or now really for 6 straight games as of this current moment, but 7 of the last 8? And if there were games added on to that, why would the Celtics jeopardize all the rhythm they're gaining with this team, and really Kristaps' rhythm as well? Because, when you condition for the game of basketball, playing an NBA basketball game, you have to be conditioned. And when you're coming back from an injury, you typically need a game to actually recondition yourself, if not 2, to actually get back into the flow of things, the play of everything. Kristaps Porzingis missing 6+ games right now, 7 of the last 8. To me, that's going to take him completely out of the conditioning conversation for being ready right now, and he's going to need a little bit of a moment to return to the floor. I'm not saying he needs 2 weeks or anything to ramp back up like for a typical injury, but at this moment in time, just missing the amount of games he has, Kristaps Porzingis, he's going to need to condition before coming back to the floor. So to me, it makes no sense as to why the Boston Celtics would shut him down at this point in the year right now, unless it was a serious infection, a serious illness that he's actually dealing with on a daily basis. If the Celtics were going to rest him, I really think it would be calf strain. And it would be every other game. It would be, he plays the Portland game, but he's not playing the Philadelphia game. Oh, he's playing LA, but he's not playing Utah. I think they would do that with Kristaps Porzingis like they're doing with Al Horford right now. Yet Kristaps Porzingis' injury, that's something that, to me, when you're missing as many games as he is, that is actually concerning from my perspective. And if it's about his leg, specifically from a surgical standpoint, that is really concerning for me. But I don't want to lean on the pessimistic side. I'd rather lean towards optimism, but really the tweet just doesn't give us any of that. Sorry, go ahead, Franco.
And I would rather sit on the I'm more concerned about it just due to way it was put out to the public mainly, but and due to the fact that it has been 7 out of the past 8 games that he has been out with this illness. So that's why I'm leaning more on the pessimistic side, and I am hoping. I mean, I am really, really hoping that Griffin and Randy, you guys are right, and this is something that this team is just trying to rest. Because if this is something serious, it's something that this team should be genuinely concerned about going forward. And I'm I just don't feel like comfortable to say what my take on what's going on until more information is released on what is going on with Kristaps Porzingis' health. We're kind of playing a game of decoder with this tweet, trying to break it down, see what messages are trying to be found from it. And I would say that I'm not seeing the Celtics team as like liars or trying to cover up resting their players. If this was something that was more focused rehab on rehabilitation side of things, then I think that there would have been a much more different tonality to the message that Kristaps sent out, or it wouldn't have came from Kristaps Porzingis himself.
I think another part of that tweet could have been, I mean, Porzingis, you guys all know it. You guys have been like seeing the games. He cheers his cup of coffee to the fans, and Boston loves him. I think the big thing is this simply could have been he loves Boston and he genuinely is just dying to get back on the court and he can't. I think there's a lot of ways we could point with this tweet, but I think the thing with Porzingis is you gotta look at this. We're thinking the worst and we're hoping the best. But like we just need him to come back. We need him to come back
Right.
healthy, and this raises a lot of concern because if this is an infection and no one knows about it, this concerns me because the Celtics pass. I mean, look at Reggie Lewis, for example. Like, look at bigger names who kind of got shut down from an injury, and that kind of is a big concern to me. And I get a little scared when we talk about infection and we talk about this. I really hope that he can make a speedy recovery because Porzingis, we're gonna need him in the playoffs, and it's gonna make it a lot easier. But like, this is my thing. If you have to shut him down for the season, do it. And you talked about this, Seamus. What if we shut him down, but then we kind of give him the last 3 games to get his feet right? What are your thoughts about that? Do you think if we give him a little more time at the end, like, because you think about it, when you come back from a injury, you have to condition yourself. And you did say that can take a few games. So what if they're waiting to kind of let him condition towards the end of the season? Where are your thoughts along that? Where are your thoughts along my take?
To me, that's a slippery slope and a little bit of a dangerous plan to execute if you're the Boston Celtics, just from the standpoint of I'm never a huge fan of guys coming back right before the playoffs or even during the playoffs because I just think that's another level of conditioning they need to get to in a short amount of time. And if things are rushed, we've seen in the past major injuries happen from even star players in the NBA playoffs from maybe being rushed back a little bit too quick, not being conditioned, whether it's their muscles or really just their body, whether the recovery of their injury, whether it's the muscles or even just in terms of players being able to breathe in and out of their lungs. I mean, really, we saw Kevin Durant in 2019. He was rushed back with an injury and he tore his Achilles. I mean, that's really one of the biggest ones of our generation. But there have been plenty others looking at role players and other players out there as well. And I think Kristaps Porzingis, if you're wanting to rush him back during a time period of the playoffs or even before the playoffs, I'm not a huge fan of that idea from the standpoint of if you're rushing him back too quick, you can end up injuring him beyond where he is right now, or even if you're rushing him back too quick, he might not be as effective. So it's almost a double negative for the Celtics if they do that and approach that plan from the standpoint of number one, if you bring him back too soon, he might re-injure whatever he was dealing with. He might sustain another injury from really ramping up. You think about if you stretch something elastic and you do it really slow, it just goes on. Oh wow. Wow.
Wow.
Happy New Year, folks. Happy New Year. Happy
There's
New Year.
so many. If you do like thumbs down or like, or
Wait,
you could
wait.
give it a heart. Give it.
Oh,
a heart.
I know about this. I know about this.
Yup. And then if you give it thumbs down, you have to make sure your thumbs are good. Yup. Yup.
There's the heart again.
Got
The
hit with this.
thumbs.
Yo, that's sick. That's
Oh, it's over here.
You gotta
The
make
thumbs up. Thumbs up. Why do we need thumbs down?
thumbs up. Yeah. Oh, I guess
Thumbs
it doesn't do it on MacBook.
I don't know. Oh, there we go.
You know what though? Those fireworks and the thumbs up show positive signs to Porzingis coming back. I gotta say that. That's positive. Fireworks are fireworks positive. You see that? You see fireworks, and that's happy, right?
That's what I'm rolling with because
so let's
I
take
roll with
this
anything
away.
else.
Let's take this away. We're seeing so many positive things. So let's think positively. Let's not think. I love what you said. Like we definitely need to be concerned. We totally do. This needs to be in the back of our mind. But we saw positive stuff. Let's think positive. Porzingis is gonna come back soon, and it's gonna be healthy. I'm saying that. I saw the positive. It proved itself.
I think it can happen. I'm not. See, here's the thing. Right now,
Mhm.
the injury, the illness to me going into tonight, wasn't really thinking twice about it. Wasn't really thinking too much about it at all. Yet when the tweet comes out, I read the tweet and I go, what is this? What is this? You don't know about it yet?
The
You
bomb
don't-
came out of me.
Yeah.
Seriously, because that unfortunately, it's like I do want to think positively about this, but we've also seen in the past these little hints come out here, and there around injuries. It doesn't have to be on the Boston Celtics; could be any club around the NBA, and it's usually, oh, I'm getting back soon, but I'm battling rehab. Oh, this is happening, and it's very opaque right now. This Porzingis situation is opaque. For one, Porzingis tried to release a tweet that clarifies things that really just raised more questions to the general public as a whole. But number two, the Boston Celtics have only said he's ill, which we know right now it's a viral infection, more so than we knew earlier this afternoon. But he's ill. The Celtics haven't really come out and said anything about a timetable of return. So there are just some things that really are raising alarm bells. But ultimately, it's not as if we're sitting here and thinking, oh, Kristaps Porzingis isn't going to be able to make a playoff run because still a month away from the playoffs. Kristaps, there's nothing that's been more alarming than what we've already seen with the tweet, and we're really speculating a lot when it comes to that tweet. We're not putting anything in stone. So in terms of Kristaps really getting back on the floor and getting healthy, I really do believe that's that could be a possibility. It really is.
I feel like. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And just kind of adding on to that, I think it's just so. I feel like he might have even said this. He might be close, like you said, he might return against the Thunder. But I think the thing is, fans are upset. He might have got some DMs or something because they're like, all right, well, you said you're ready for the Lakers. Now you're sitting again. So this kind of may have been a positive thing and had clarification because he doesn't want fans to be upset because people look up to him in Boston. He's like Smart's replacement, and he takes over those shoes of the hero of Boston. Maybe this was because he thought he was going to come back against LA, isn't quite conditioned enough, and now he got some nasty comments, and he was like, all right, well, I don't want them to hate me, so I'm going to just write this because I'm still working back.
So that's definitely more the tinfoil point of view, the tinfoil. But see, I'm here for the tinfoil because really the health of this ball club matters. It really does. It matters 100% going into the playoffs later in the year because, and really I say later in the year right now, we're about a month away from playoffs. Right now, March 10th. I mean, the playoffs are going to start around, April 15th, somewhere in there. So there's a month until the playoffs. That's what's kind of a little, looking at the schedule, looking at the calendar, we're kind of raising an eyebrow to what's going on with Porzingis, but there's still time for him to come back and, of course, deal with whatever he is dealing with. But I did want to ask one more question for the panel before we close off here. Of course, Randy needing to dip out, but this question is in regard to the Celtics opponent tonight, and it's really not about the Utah Jazz. We're not. No, we're not actually. We're not going to talk about. We could talk. We could talk a little bit about the main Celtics at the end, but I'm
No,
going
I
to
was
raise
saying
this question first.
Luke.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Svi and Jaden Springer, of course, on the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
But looking at the Jazz, right? Looking at the bottom of the standings. Now, the Boston Celtics and the Jazz, they gave the Jazz their 50th loss of the season tonight. So the Jazz 15-50 on the year. That is the second worst record in the league, just behind the Washington Wizards, who are 13-50 on the season. But the Utah Jazz will certainly be in the running for one Mr. Cooper Flag this summer.
Flag. I'm
in
from
June.
Maine, so that's a big thing from me.
Yes.
Yep.
Home state kid for yourself and Cooper Flag. But the Celtics faced a team who could very well harbor Cooper Flag the next time the Boston Celtics face the Jazz next season. They'll actually face the Jazz one more time this season, but next season, the Utah Jazz could have Cooper Flag on their roster. But looking at the bottom of the NBA standings right now, the draft lottery reads as such. And again, draft lottery, this is just based on the records right now. There will be a whole ping pong ball selection in May, and we'll actually see who wins. The lottery wins the number one pick overall. But right now, as the records stand, with about 20 games to go in the season, the team with the best odds to land the number one overall pick, the Washington Wizards, 13-50 on the year. Already mentioned them. But number two, the Utah Jazz. Number three, Charlotte Hornets in the Eastern Conference, the second worst team in the Eastern Conference. Then we go to the second worst team in the West, the New Orleans Pelicans, with the fourth best odds at the number one overall pick. Toronto, number five. Philadelphia, number six. Very, very big for Philadelphia to stay in that number 6 spot in the draft and not fall down, because if they do, they owe Oklahoma City and the Thunder their pick. The Sixers owe that pick to the Thunder from the Al Horford trade, trying to get rid of Al Horford's contract. The Sixers gave that pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Sixers, if it falls top 6, the Sixers get to keep the pick. But if it's outside of the top 6, it'll be the Thunders. But right now, the Sixers are in 6th and actually tied with the Brooklyn Nets for 6th. 8th is the San Antonio Spurs. 9th, the Chicago Bulls. 10th, the Portland Trailblazers. 11th, the Miami Heat. 12th, the Phoenix Phoenix Suns. No, you'll see why I said this. Phoenix, they'll be trading their pick to the Houston Rockets. So
all right, there you go.
The Phoenix Rockets. I was like, wait a minute, hold up. The Dallas Mavericks own the 13th best odds at the number one overall pick, and then it's the Kings at 14, but the Kings pick belongs to the Atlanta Hawks. But looking at specifically the top 5, the Wizards, the Jazz, the Hornets, the Pelicans, and the Raptors, you could even throw the Sixers and the Nets in there at number 6 as well. Out of all the teams in the lottery, specifically the teams at the top, the teams most likely to land Cooper Flag, which of the 14 teams? Yes, 14 teams. Which of the 14 lottery teams own the best fit for Cooper Flag coming into the league? Griffin, we'll let you go first on this one.
Wait, did you mention Brooklyn?
Yes, and number 6. They're 7th/6th right now. They're jockeying with Philadelphia. And I'll disclaim this too about the standings at the bottom is really they change every single day. I mean, a team wins a game, loses a game. They change every single day. I think earlier today the Bulls were at 7. Right now, I think I just read them at 9. So it changes every single day. But out of the lottery teams, who's the best fit for Cooper Flag?
Okay, so you guys want to hear something really cool? I went to high school a half hour away from where Cooper Flag went to high school, and my school would face him in sports. When he and I've heard going to college, I've heard so many stories of people who played with Cooper and like 1v1 him and stuff. So and that's just a background about Maine and kind of being the hometown hero. But I don't. This is where we come into. Will he have another year at Duke? Because it makes you wonder, because he doesn't want to play for the Wizards. He doesn't. No, who really wants to play for the Wizards? I'm being honest. I'm saying Brooklyn. I'm saying Brooklyn because the reason I didn't like the Nets was because they made this unrealistic super team getting James Harden, Kyrie, and Durant. That's why I didn't like them. But as soon as they lost them and they had some young talent, I was like, all right, I'll be on board with them. So I like Cooper Flag there. I think the Pelicans would be fine. The Raptors, maybe that would be kind of a good place for him. But I don't want to see him with the Wizards or the Jazz. But Cooper, you get a lot from Cooper. You guys know that. You guys see what he's doing there, and I could go on a rant about Cooper for an hour and a half. I totally could. But great talent. And do you guys think kind of an add-on question too? Do you guys think that he runs it back and does another year, or do you think he goes straight to the NBA?
I mean,
Too much money resides in the NBA right now.
Yeah,
Too much
but
money.
is he
About the
willing?
second contract. It's not. It's about the second contract. The first contract, you can make a deal with yourself and go, okay, I get 10 million on my first NBA deal if I'm the number one overall pick. Which right now it's probably got to be like 14 million almost for the number one overall pick.
It's around 13 or something like that.
13, 14,
But
yeah, somewhere around there.
do you think
But
he's willing to be
you,
like, all right, I don't
yeah,
want to do that if I go to the Wizards. Like
you could
money,
rationalize like, okay, yeah, I can make this amount of money in college, but at the same time, it's about the second contract in the NBA. It's about really getting to that second deal, really getting the years under your belt towards that second year deal as soon as possible, because that second rookie max extension, or rather the rookie max extension, the second contract a player receives in the league, that can be over $200 million, if not more, as we see in the years go by here in the future when Cooper Flag eventually gets there. It's going to be a lot more than what it is now. And I think that's a huge factor when it comes to players playing in the league. They want to get to that second contract. They don't want to waste some of their talent and maybe spheres of play that, this kind of sounds bad for college basketball, but spheres of play that might not matter and might not get them paid as much within their whole legacy and their time playing the game of basketball. So I think Cooper Flag, I think he's going to be in the NBA next year. I
Yeah.
think that's for certain. Go
can
ahead.
I really quick? Can I add
Go ahead,
something
Frank.
just really quick
Yeah.
too? But he's also super young. He just turned 18. And add-on question too for Franco. Do you guys just kick in some Celtics? Do you guys ever see him with the Celtics before his career's over? I just want to add that in too.
If the
Yes,
Celtics
yes.
could pull off that, I mean, we got to look at the
Free agent.
CBA for the Boston Celtics going forward. I don't think we can see the Celtics really making a move to add anything more talented than they have on this roster until 2030. Like, the guys that you got right now and the guys that you have developing in the G League on the back end of your roster, those are the guys you're going to have to be relying on in 2027, 2028, and even nearing around 2030, when the only players left on contract are Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It's going to be that would be ridiculously challenging. Who knows? Maybe he could be the veteran. He could be the veteran mentor for Deuce Tatum when he comes into the NBA.
Yeah.
I really think
That's like the most hypothetical, logistical BS I could spew. But I'll give to return back to the question for where is the best fit for Cooper Flag. I'll take this opportunity on the Utah Jazz post game show to give the Utah Jazz somewhat of their credibility. Do you know how badly Danny Ainge probably wants Cooper Flag on the Utah Jazz? Him being a Boston scout, obviously probably has an ear to Scalabrini, who has done a lot of work with him with the White Mamba Academy. Also hearing all the other routes that he has to New England. I feel like the Utah Jazz are sprawling for a player of his caliber, because they've brought in two players, but they haven't really had that homegrown talent since Donovan Mitchell. when he left this team in a few years back. But they bring in players like Colin Sexton and Laurie Markkinen, who are still younger players, still have a few years left of their careers. Some would say they're nearing or are in their prime. So I think that you could, I would say the best chance for Cooper Flag to perform at uh, his top performance level would be with a team like the Utah Jazz, because you look at any of these other teams, Alexander Sarr with the Washington Wizards, the number one pick from, or the second pick from last year. He's kind of just been riding around with the Washington Wizards, and the Washington Wizards don't seem to have any sense of direction with where they're going. I mean, they have the 2021-2022 Boston Celtics bench backcourt on their team right now with Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon coming off the bench for them, which
It's pretty funny. That's true.
it's my, as we like to say, mind-boggling to me that how their roster is constructed. It makes me scratch my head when I look at the way they built their team, how they completely dismantled the Kuzma pool ideal going on, and you really haven't been able to get those star contributions from your younger players. So I think Washington would be a very risky team for him to go to. But once again, there's a lot of teams that he could have a genuine impact on and lead to positive. And obviously, you don't want to be drafted to a team who's not going to be very good. But there's a reason why every single team in the NBA draft has the number one draft pick at some point.
Yeah, really looking at all the teams who could potentially land Cooper Flag, I really think the team the Celtics face tonight actually might be the most competent of all the squads at the bottom who could potentially land Cooper Flag. I think the Utah Jazz, number one, they have a relatively new owner in the NBA, Ryan Smith, who has really proven to be a competent owner in the Utah space, the Salt Lake City space, really with the arena, the hockey club as well, playing in the arena. But the Utah Jazz, they seem like a well-ran organization from an ownership perspective, but not only that, from a front office perspective, we know they have one of the best minds in NBA basketball and one of the best GMs in NBA basketball in Danny Ainge. With his time with the Celtics was one of the best GMs in all of basketball, and he's done a fairly good job with this Jazz team as well. And you notice he's in a lot of the deals we see out there at the trade deadline or even ahead of the trade deadline in the offseason. Danny Ainge is always getting his hands on extra picks, extra players, rerouting. You know, he's the third team, the fourth team in some deals, and he really understands the game of dealing out there with other teams and really building an NBA roster ready to make a championship run. And so for me, I look at it and go, well, competent front office, competent ownership in Utah, and also they kind of understand their direction as well, which right now the team has no direction, but that is the direction for the Utah Jazz. It's for them to lose ball games. They understand right now this is an era in which we want to lose in order to attain a player of Cooper Flag status. And the Utah Jazz will have a very good chance as they are second overall right now in the draft lottery. Some of the other teams, though, I'm a little afraid if Cooper Flag goes to these teams, they'll be relying a little bit too hard on Cooper Flag to turn around their entire organization when there's no substance within their organization to turn around. I mean, the Washington Wizards, you already said it, Franco. There seems to be no sense of direction there whatsoever. You have Chris Middleton on the roster, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon. You have some veteran help, but your young guys aren't developed whatsoever if you're the Washington Wizards. Koulibaly, Alexander Sarr is sitting there. Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. Obviously, Kuzma's gone, but that whole ordeal was just a head scratcher and very confusing for the Washington Wizards to go through. And it was really for losing, but they haven't reaped too much from the losing so far. But the Wizards, their young core, even thinking about Bub Carrington from this past year, they're just a core that's not quite developed, and they don't really have a direction of where they want to go when they want to go there. The Charlotte Hornets, they've been just in a perpetual rebuilding state. I think that's a team that you could look out and go, okay, if Cooper Flag enters that roster, you have LaMelo Ball there, you have Brandon Miller, you still have Miles Bridges, and how about this? You have Mark Williams as well, a highly sought after player by the Lakers at one point. But that Hornets roster all of a sudden starts looking a little bit more formidable out of the East second tier. But that Hornets roster, the thing that concerns me is there's no culture within that building. Now, Charles Lee, first year head coach there from the Boston Celtics, of course, was with the Celtics staff last year. He's there in Charlotte trying to muster up wins with those guys. But I don't see that culture in Charlotte, and I don't see that trajectory with that team. I think there's a lot of questions surrounding some of the leaders of that team. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, they don't really strike me as leaders. Is Cooper Flag going to be able to come in and lead right away? I think it's more likely than not that LaMelo would request a trade potentially out of Charlotte before Cooper Flag ever really became that leader with the Charlotte Hornets. And I'm not sure about Cooper Flag's fit there, although it would start to kind of muster up a talented roster. New Orleans is just all over the place. I think they could end up being one of the more talented rosters if they landed Cooper Flag, but we all know New Orleans, they've just fumbled the bag time and time again. I mean, think about they had Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday on the same roster. They were nowhere near contention with those guys. I mean, they made the second round once. Congrats. They beat the Portland Trailblazers in round one, then were waxed by the Golden State Warriors the next round. But that was a long time ago. Fumbled that era with Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday. And then the next era where they see all these great goodies from the Los Angeles Lakers who are competing with nobody yet gave the New Orleans Pelicans this treasure chest of awesome assets from Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, DeAndre Hunter as a pick that turned into Dyson Daniels, and gave all of those assets to the New Orleans Pelicans. What did the Pelicans do to them? I mean, they basically pissed all over them and pissed them away because New Orleans Pelicans, they're fourth, they're their fourth worst record right now in the NBA, and they made terrible trade after terrible trade, terrible move, letting guys walk, and they haven't given the money to the right players. I mean, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, two of their more max guys, and Brandon Ingram's actually on the next team I'm going to face, or the next team that I'm going to put out here. But in terms of the Pelicans, who they paid, which assets they've kept, which assets they traded away, they've never been able to build a legitimate contending roster around what they have. And looking at where the Pelicans are now, they're just in the middle of a mess. So to send Cooper Flag there, I mean, we've seen it with a guy like Zion, even DeMarcus Cousins. DeMarcus Cousins is one of the most outspoken guys on New Orleans, and the aspect of the New Orleans Pelicans, the scenario of where they actually are in New Orleans. I mean, their arena is right next to the Superdome. The Pelicans are owned by the same family who owns the New Orleans Saints, and you definitely play little brother to the Saints in the city of New Orleans if you're the New Orleans Pelicans. So that's also a reason why Cooper Flag might not be great.
Can I add something on there?
Go ahead.
When you're getting, they compare him to Kevin Garnett. When you're getting Kevin Garnett talent on your team, and you see how much of a leader he is at Duke, and you just see his aggressiveness, and he's kind of bringing back that trash talking basketball, kind of similar to Anthony Edwards, and you see him kind of that star player. You don't want him, like you're listing off, you don't want him to go to these places where it looks like a dumpster fire, like with Washington, what they're doing there. You traded your younger players and like, you want him to go somewhere where he's going to be successful and there's going to be success down the line. Sorry, I just need to add that in because like I said, I'm a big Cooper guy because he lived 30 minutes for me, and all we'll have to this off season on Celtics Nation Rise. Let's all get on a podcast and let's have a Cooper Flag podcast. I'm saying it, just one episode.
We'll send you a
we got to do draft, and we got to do summer league for Cooper Flag too.
We do, because you could go on for hours and hours about this guy. He's like, I know how much hype there was around Wemby, but this is also a player who's from the United States, from Maine, in like so close to Boston. And that's why I was kind of asking you guys the question, like, do you guys see him someday? Like, because he's going to be a free agent someday, maybe be that hero and come to Boston, because I don't know if he said it or I think he said, who doesn't want to play for their hometown team? Like, I don't know. I'm just so big on Cooper, and you guys, I don't know how much you hear, especially you, Seamus, but like I hear every day. I hear Cooper Flag, and it's just because look where he's from, and his brother Ace. I don't know if you guys heard much about Ace Flag. He's going to UMaine. He's going to be some person that we're later on down the road talking about in the NBA draft. Obviously, nowhere near as good as Cooper Flag, but we'll talk about him someday. I guarantee it. We'll be on here chatting about, oh, Ace Flag, where is he gonna go? Yeah, sorry. Sorry. There's my Cooper Flag rant. Told you I'd go for hours for him.
I could see Cooper Flag, a hometown team one day, but it would have to be 7, 8, 9 years
Yeah.
from
Oh,
now.
way
And,
down
and,
the
and
road.
that's where you see it as there is some plausibility to that because in a decade, you don't know what Tatum and Brown are going to be doing, where they're going to be, if they're going to still be playing basketball. And you don't know how Cooper Flag, how his career is going to play out. He could go to New Orleans, like I was just talking about, absolutely hate it there. I want to come back to the Northeast. So I could definitely see Cooper Flag in a Celtics uniform, although it would have to be quite a while, quite a ways away.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% because the thing about with Cooper is like I think that's why you're speculating hearing him being like, all right, I'll be down to run it back one more year. I think you're hearing that because obviously you think about it. You think about the draft and you want to go to a team where there's success. But if the Wizards get it, he knows what's going on in Washington. And you have so many NBA players in his phone. You have Scal, who's the biggest person in his contact, literally brought him to Boston, like made Cooper Flag known, Brian Scalabrine. So you have all these guys in there. They're like, all right, you don't want to go there. You maybe. So that's why. And his parents are smart. His parents are super smart. I don't know if you guys heard a lot about them, but super. He has a super smart family, and they're just trying to set him up for success. And that's why they're like, I mean, you guys have to think too. He was 17 in December. Like he was 17, not even classified as an adult, 18 just in December. He was 17 in college. So that's why I kind of be like, all right, listen, it's concerning because you want to get right into the NBA, but he's still so young and like he's nowhere near where he could be with basketball. I just had to throw that in there too.
I think we gotta get you to. We'll do like a little research project. Send you into his hometown. Maybe see if we can find some of his buddies. See if we can hang out with some of his guys that he used to shoot at the rec hoops with.
You
And
guys,
that would be some good project for the summer. And who knows? There's another team. Oh, actually, no. They don't even have the. Do they still have that chance for Cooper Flag? The next team coming up on our lineup, the Oklahoma City Thunder, or does that still go to the 76ers? Because I remember seeing a whole bunch of posts about that the Thunder could somehow walk away with the ping pong ball of Cooper Flag.
Or the Spurs. With Wemby going down. I mean, I'm saying you heard all the rumors with like Tim Duncan and all of them. So I'm saying maybe the Spurs. And definitely, I talk to so many people. There's so many people I go to college with that know Cooper Flag, played basketball with him, have him on their phone still too. Like he's definitely an important role in their life. And like I said, I'm close. I'm actually not too far from his hometown. So yeah, 100%. Oh, it looks like Seamus is frozen. So yeah. So I mean, I could ramble on a little more about Cooper Flag if you want. So it's actually funny. I heard a story about him, how he I'll say this story while we're waiting for Seamus. So I guess he played pickup basketball, right? Oh, Seamus, I'm telling you, Cooper
Well,
Flag.
this is what happens when you're 2.5 hours into a post game. Your camera dies. So
I know. I started getting into a Cooper Flag story because we were like, where did Seamus go?
All right. Well, I'm here. I'm on the iPad right now.
Oh, that iPad. All right,
I'll gotta pull out the iPad.
I'll give it to you quick. So I heard he was playing against some UMaine guys, and they were talking smack about him. And I heard he was giving it right back. and he beat those UMaine guys when he was like, I think 13 or 14 years old, like grown college kids. He smacked them up in basketball. So that just shows his like attitude and kind of his willingness and just wanting to succeed above everyone.
Yeah, I think if you really look at all the teams that Cooper Flag could go to, we were talking about really the next team I was going to talk about is the Raptors. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Emmanuel Quickly, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, they're top 3 highest paid players right now. I think if Cooper Flag went there, it'd just be a total mistake. But after that, you have the Sixers. I mean, hey, that would be a turnaround from the Sixers having a
Oh,
putrid
that would be
season.
huge for the Sun or the.
I mean, they would have a rising star on a great contract compared to their terrible, awful, no good deals right now in Joel Embiid and Paul George. That would definitely boost some Sixers statuses the next couple of seasons. But if the Sixers, they don't fall within that top 6, could go to a team like the Nets. The Nets are really just bare bones right now with what they have. That'd be a bare bones team.
You can build what.
But think about it though. Think about this. I see him in the jersey for one. And that's a team I could see him having a lot of success with and building something there. That I'm just saying that because they're just you think about their talent and what they have, they don't have much, so they're just gonna keep getting picks and they're gonna keep building. They're kind of gonna be like OKC team. I think they will.
I think that could happen with the Brooklyn Nets, considering the picks they have, and really they still have some young talent on their roster. Plus, I would say the Northeast superstar, the Northeast, what should be the rising star in Cooper Flag comes back to the Northeast. It's kind of an interesting conversation whether some guys want to return home or they don't, because some guys actually don't like to return home. Like Kevin Durant, he's always said, "Oh, I don't want to go back to DC. I've been around DC my entire life. I've had to move a million different places in DC," and that's why he ultimately, well, he was drafted by Seattle, completely different place. They moved to Oklahoma City, but then after that, played with the Golden State Warriors, played with the Brooklyn Nets, didn't quite come home to DC as we've seen out in Phoenix right now. But I always find it fascinating whether a player actually wants to go back home or whether they actually want to go somewhere else. That's going to be the question with Cooper Flag. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they're probably not going to land Cooper Flag because they are, if the 76ers, if they land the 76ers pick, the 76ers pick will have to be 7 through 30. And that's only if Cooper Flag falls down to 7. I highly doubt that's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
But regardless, the Celtics see the Oklahoma City Thunder next on their schedule. The Thunder, they maintain a substantial lead out west. They're the West #1 seed right now. And the Celtics, we all know what happened earlier in the season between the Celtics and the Thunder. The Celtics go into Oklahoma City, play one of their best halves of the season in the first half, and then immediately followed up by one of the worst halves, if not the worst half, even in Celtic history. Worst quarter, worst half. I mean, really, it was up there on par with some of the worst in Celtics history against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Celtics eventually succumbed to the Oklahoma City Thunder in that game back in early January. But there's going to be another chance on the horizon for the Boston Celtics to right their wrongs against the Oklahoma City Thunder coming up on Wednesday on ESPN. The Boston Celtics face off with OKC, a battle of some titans between the East and the West. But looking ahead to this game, what do the Celtics need to do in order to bring home a quality win over the Thunder? We'll start with you, Franco.
I think they need to get a little bit more acclimated with the song. You should be dancing by the Bee Gees. That's when they should be feeling comfortable enough to start letting these leads disappear. Once Gino shows up on the screen, starts dancing around, you hear the whole crowd clapping and dancing. That's when the starters can feel like it's time to take their foot off the gas. Not when it's halfway through the third quarter and you only have created a 25-point lead. We've seen in today's NBA that a 25-point lead within 10 minutes of basketball is still a fair game, especially how this has become such a game of runs. So the Celtics really need to be able to control their runs, also control the tempo against such a young team like the Oklahoma City Thunder. Once throughout that first half of play from the first time we faced off with them at Oklahoma City, you saw the Celtics controlled the narrative of the first half, were able to create their own shots, contain the flow of the Thunder, were able to stop them, created a lot of transition baskets for themselves, and weren't pacing themselves off the court. When you're facing a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are notorious right now for their youth, their ability, and their undoubtedly talented roster that is only going to get better as time goes on, you need to be able to just maintain. It's maintain, and not allow them to gain their own speed and be able to burn these Celtics, which we've seen they are much capable of doing in a game.
I think it's ultimately this. You see the Thunder, they're young, they're fast, they're athletic, they're a great basketball team. They're a great basketball organization there right now. Um, but I think what the Boston Celtics have them with is just experience, talent, and just chemistry. I'm gonna say that. I think ultimately with the Boston Celtics, like you said, Franco, you can't get your foot off that gas pedal. We talked about it, creating bad habits. The Celtics' bad habit right now, and their number one issue is creating a big lead and just destroying it. Not getting kind of comfortable with it, kind of relaxing, being like, all right, well, we got the game down. All right, now we can kind of give it a little softer defense. No, I want them if they're up by 25 in the first quarter, you got to keep going like your heart depends on it, because that's a Thunder team that doesn't get tired. That's a Thunder team that you need to kind of get them right there, and you got to slam them. You need to, because that Thunder team is not a team to play around with. And I think if we're talking about it, kind of finals matchup, I think that's the biggest name, and that's ultimately, for me, I think that's the Celtics' biggest threat. And you can't lose this series. You can't go down in the season series 2-0. You can't, because then you're kind of missing out. And we talk about it, it's funny. I after a Maine Celtics game, my brother and I went to B-Dubs, watch the game, and it's like we were doing so good, and I'm like slamming my head against it. I'm like, what are we doing? Like I wish I had the stats up right now, but even Porzingis said it was an embarrassment, who we talk about not being there. It's like you gotta they embarrass you. I don't know who said it earlier in the show, but I think that's gonna kind of give the Celtics a little more heat too, a little more fire under them. Like, all right, this team embarrassed you. And everyone's like, oh, Thunder, Thunder, Thunder. And that's why we go into who's the biggest threat. It might be the Thunder, because look what they did to the Boston Celtics. They humiliated us. If I'm being honest, they really did. That was embarrassing what we did in that second half. Porzingis said it. Celtics team said it. So tomorrow is one game, and I think ultimately you could say is kind of the last game in the regular season that matters so much, that you want to make a statement with, and you want to kind of drive that Thunder team to the ground and be like, hey, we're the defending champs. You guys need to worry about us because we're a problem. Tomorrow is when you need to do that.
Yeah, what's interesting about a contending squad, what the unique thing about a contending squad is, they not only have to worry about teams in their own conference, but they also have to worry about teams in the other conference. And that's where the Boston Celtics are right now, because as much conversation as we've had about the Cleveland Cavaliers, the New York Knicks this season, in particular in the East, for who could any team take out the Boston Celtics. Really, we're looking out West too to see who the Celtics could potentially face in the NBA Finals, and that being the team that the Celtics need to overcome in order to achieve the greatest goals set for themselves this season, which is a back-to-back title. Out West, the Oklahoma City Thunder, a lot of people are a little weary on the Thunder just because of their youth, just because they haven't necessarily been there before. When they were there before last year, they faltered to the Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic, and a more half-court style of play. This year, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're back to playing up tempo. They rely a lot off cuts and offensive movement. If some of that is stifled and slowed down in the playoffs, a lot of people question that. They question the overall just Thunder, the age, the median age of the roster. It's a very young median age for a team in the league who's competing specifically, especially against other veteran-led squads out there. Most notably in the West, you have the Nuggets, you have the Lakers, you have the Warriors, who have all won titles this decade, still with some of the same leaders on those squads. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're the clear-cut first seed out West. And right now, that could be an opponent of the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. And from that, the Celtics in these games, I almost wonder if, looking at the games right now, do the Celtics? We've kind of talked about this back on Friday against the Cavaliers, where the Celtics, maybe they weren't giving away some of their game plan in that game. Maybe they weren't throwing out their entire looks, their entire playbook that game, specifically not to give the Cavs any film they could work with. Well, could this game against the Oklahoma City be somewhat of the same? Could some of these bigger games late in the season be one and the same? If not, I really think these are games in which the Celtics, they come out with a different energy for. I mean, we saw that play out in Oklahoma City earlier this season, but just with other opponents this week. I mean, look at the Cavaliers game, the start of the Cavs game, the start of the Nuggets game, the start of the Lakers game. It looked nothing like the start of the 76ers game, the start of the Blazers game, the start of the Jazz game. And these games are just a little bit different when the better opponents come into the Celtics building. And the Thunder and Celtics, I think we're going to be in for a good one regardless, because the Celtics, I think there is an aspect of embarrassment there working for the Boston Celtics in this upcoming game, knowing the Thunder, they're a team they wanted to blow out the last time we saw these two face in Oklahoma City. I mean, the Thunder, they were clearly behind the Celtics at halftime. The Celtics had the advantage in that game, and the Thunder just came out and whooped the Celtics in the second half. And from that, I think the Celtics, they had motivation in that game to come out and win. They didn't achieve their goal whatsoever. And now they look at the schedule in front of them and realize that they can achieve somewhat of the same goal on their home floor if they come out and they play a consistent ball game. That was nothing like the inconsistent ball game that we saw in Oklahoma City. But that is going to wrap us up here for tonight, as we will have you covered for that Oklahoma City game, the Celtics and Thunder facing off between each other on Wednesday on ESPN. After the game, come right in here to the Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show on the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel and check us out. Of course, we will have you covered right after the buzzer of the Oklahoma Thunder and Boston Celtics game on Wednesday. And of course, we will have you covered after every single game the rest of the way this season. But for now, that is going to end it for us on the Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. As I always say, thank you all for watching. I'm your host, Seamus Arlingo, alongside of me tonight, Franco and Griffin. Again, thank you all for watching. And as I always say, go Celtics.